ride with the a little bit the position and the wheel spinning. But here we are.
Oh, well, I wish I hadn't got that prediction correct. Yeah, I did wonder whether or not we would have any riders attacking, and at the moment, even you can see Diego Sevilla in the blue jersey, the King of the Mountains competition from Polti Visit Malta. He's not even looking to attack, so this could go on for a little while. Eventually, Jacopo, on stages like this, we will have an attack, but not yet, seemingly.
No. We hope later on that for sure they're going to be the Tarozzi has loaded himself at the front, but I don't know whether to try to go in a breakaway, but it doesn't seem like. Yesterday was involved in the yesterday breakaway, very strong ride by this young Italian, by Tarozzi, but it seems like that he want to go out and hit in front, hitting the road today again, and yeah, something like happens. I mean, especially after a very demanding stage like yesterday, and the prices along the route today are not many, so that's why this kind of situation could happen, and it's that's the situation we got right now.
What we might see fairly soon is a sort of jokey attack. That happens as well.
Very annoying jokey attack.
It's incredibly annoying, but it might just happen. Watch out for that as well. You can see how strong the wind is, though. Look at that. It's a cross headwind at the moment.
And this doesn't help the riders to go on the attack, and you know, it's not an invitation for them to just go and try something, because they know they need to spend a lot of energy in order to go on the breakaway, and most of the day the wind is going to be either in the face of the riders or a little bit more on the side, but never really in favor, first of all, for an echelon. And even the finale, even the approach to Naples, it's going to be not the easiest way, thanks to the wind. Only the last 400 meters they're going to be a little bit easier, because the wind is going to be blowing the back of the riders, but till then it's going to be a slow race today.
Well, the early morning, we do have an attack, unless it's a jokey attack. No, it seems to be a fairly genuine attempt to get away, is it? No, it's a jokey attack.
Yeah, because it was Lennart van Eetvelt.
And it's Lennart van Eetvelt, who's their GC rider anyway. Just opening his legs and enjoying a bit of camera time, but that wasn't in earnest either. I mean, there's an opportunity. It's going to hurt, and it's going to be pointless, but there is an opportunity for a rider from one of the lesser teams to attack, maybe take one or two with him, and for us to be talking about those riders for the next 3 hours. Put themselves in the spotlight, but that comes at quite a cost, doesn't it? Quite a price. Here's Lennart van Eetvelt launching up on the left-hand side of the road, the right-hand side of your picture.
It seemed like very serious attack at first.
It did at first, didn't it? Fooled me, which is annoying, because I'd already talked about the idea of a jokey attack.
I think there was one time, so since I think we're going to have to fill up a little bit the space the riders are leaving, a jokey attack that went even more into the jokey side of it when, if you remember, when Tim Wellen and Adam Hansen now were responsible for the CPA, the riders representative at the UCI. So basically they went on the attack. There was, I think, inside a forest or something like this, and they stopped in the forest. They hid themselves, and the peloton was chasing those two riders very full gas, very, you know, with a lot of implication.
And they weren't there.
And no, apparently nobody informed that they were back in the peloton, and they reappeared at the back of the peloton, slotting into the cars and then reappearing at the back of the peloton. It seems like that went too far, and none in the peloton were happy or pleased about this joke. Because they was chasing for quite some times, actually.
I think, and I may have mentioned this last year, but I'll say it again, I think David Miller and Dave Zabriskie back in the days of Garmin did something very similar, except they didn't do a jokey attack, they attacked thinking it was a good idea, and then after 10, 20 kilometers realized it was a completely stupid idea, and they were deeply ashamed of their move, and they hid in the woods and let the peloton come back.
They were actually hiding from their own embarrassment.
Or as you say in French, honte.
Yeah, it's definitely a good story to know. It's the only way, like they fake like their own disappearance.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, there we go. No attacks today so far.
Something eventually will happen because we're gonna have the KOM, and also, I mean, it's a short stage. If sometimes, like we witness a situation like this, and there was specifically one stage at Paris when a lot of Flemish riders talked one each other, and it was Tim de Klerk. Back then it was a Quick Step. There was Oliver Naas and Jasper Stuyven, Edward Theems, Yves Lampard. So this kind of Belgium mob, they decided to just talk in each other, and they went on the attack, and it was chaos for, I would say, like 40 kilometers, because nobody expected this, and some teams were caught off guard. My team, for instance. We had to chase very hard for 40 kilometers because the embarrassment was actually ours because we missed that move. And
that was a Paris-Nice, wasn't it?
It was a Paris-Nice, yeah. But it's not uncommon when you had such stages that some teams, they go one another talking, and especially those features are a real contender. Might well go on the attack, and yeah, see where it goes, you know.
Everybody watching on was cursing you and your team for doing that, because everybody wanted that Belgian attack to carry on, the neutral spectators, and you went and killed the fun.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I remember just looking back over recent Napoli editions. The first Napoli edition, we've had 6 in a row, was in 2021. They've often varied, haven't we? We had a circuit race here that was won by Thomas de Gent. That was an interesting stage. And then another stage in 2023, I think it was. Yeah, 2023 was Napoli to Napoli, 162 kilometers. But I remember the breakaway that day was Alessandro De Marchi and Simon Clark. Just those 2 riders, and they were caught with something like 300 meters to go. I don't know if you remember that. Is another, possibly it might have been a headwind day, which made it even more remarkable.
Or was it 24 maybe?
23. It was Mads Pedersen who won the sprint.
Yeah, this I remember. I don't remember if it was the year of De Marchi, because
definitely was. I've just checked it because I'm looking at the results. Pedersen won ahead of Jonathan Milan and Pascal Ackermann. And in finishing in 80, wait a minute, let's have a look, 88th and 89th place.
De Marchi and Clark. Yeah. That's the edition.
And it's just amazing, isn't it? Because I do remember it was literally 250 meters or something that they were caught, and yet they finished 88th and 89th.
Yeah,
right next to one another.
And then there was the 24 edition with Olaf Koy winning the sprint in here.
Yes, that's right.
25 last year was Caden Groves. Yeah, after
that was the rainy stage where everybody crashed.
Exactly. Yeah. A horrific day on the bike for many.
But it's great, isn't it? I think we were talking about it earlier, that I think it's really important for the Giro d'Italia that towards the end, it's often towards the end of the first week, as the Giro kind of has to start in the south or work its way up from the south to the north, because you want to be in the Alps for the 3rd week. So the Napoli stage almost always kind of comes towards the end of the first week of racing, around about stage 6 or 7. Oh, crash at the back. Andreas Leknesund is down.
Jonathan Milan involved.
Jonathan Milan as well.
This is something like, it seems like no major problem, but that happens sometimes when, you know, the attention of the riders is a little bit lower, because a lot of talking and a touch of brakes are possibly for the riders who just opt to be inside of the road, but Sobrero as well.
Seems okay. It's Matteo Sobrero's birthday today. Not a particularly good way of celebrating his birthday. He's 29 years old today, Matteo Sobrero. Absolutely no panic though. What a neutralised part of the race to have a mechanical incident. Jonathan Milan's just making absolutely sure that that bike is in perfect working order.
Let's give him a little bit extra time. He might as well change the bikes, I think. Yeah, it's going to change the bike.
Having said that, even though they're riding very slowly, they've stopped for quite a while now, haven't they? So they're going to have to do a little bit of work to get back on, but they're still, as you can see, the team cars are still rolling past them, so they're still in the convoy. But it's a very leisurely change here, bike change. Just shows you just how relaxed the race is right now, that they can take this long.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's no rush for them to change it. Luckily, none of those riders were with major physical problems. Seems like all able to restart, and just it's going to add a little bit of anger, especially for Jonathan Milan. You know, it's not the way you want to start in a stage where you want to be up there and go in the hunt of a victory. We might see a replay of what happened. There's Sobrero on your right.
Yeah, and Milan in front of him. There's Sobrero. Just doesn't crash, does he? There's a Coulset does, though.
I think Sobrero and Milan, they caught up together. Coulset was two different crashes. Coulset crashed,
yep.
And while Milan was braking hard, I think Sobrero was cut off a little bit of tension and hit Jonathan Milan at the back.
Doesn't seem that Milan went down, though, does it?
No, it
just Sobrero and Coulset.
Yeah, probably just got the wheel destroyed. But it was Coulset, the only rider going down, and basically there were two separate crashes.
Things haven't quite clicked for Jonathan Milan. Whether it's a little bit of bad luck like that, and there was absolutely nothing he could do about that, or just not quite getting the lead out that he wanted on stage 1, and not quite getting the sprint right on stage 3. Things haven't quite fallen into place like they tend to do for Jonathan Milan over the last few years, especially at the Giro d'Italia, where he has been dominant. But this year, it's been a different story up to this point. Of course, one victory here would reverse everything and leave him with a big smile on his face. But even in interviews, Jacopo, he's not showing signs of stress, but he doesn't seem entirely... It doesn't seem like his old self, like he's full of sort of self-belief and joking along. He seems like he's a little bit plagued with doubt at the moment.
It's Jonathan Milan has a very, how can I say, victorious mindset. I mean,
optimistic.
He just go for the victory,
yeah,
and when it doesn't, I think this gives him a little bit of rage, kind of. And yes, indeed, it's he finished last year, I think, as the best of the sprinters. This year he started a little bit in the back foot. I mean, if you look at the races he had won this year, you would not think like that. For some older riders, it would be already a magnificent season. He won already 5 times, and I mean, it's something. But for a rider like him, for a rider of his status, not being able yet to win a stage at the Giro d'Italia, he missed the chance of the Maglia Rosa. He missed by maybe not his fault, but for way sprinting a stage in Sofia. So it's just and he does know that the chances are not many in this Giro d'Italia. So he saw already like 2 of them going away off his hand and slipping through the fingers. So I think he's full of rage and full of, you know, not anger, but like really big motivation to strike back and being able to take this home and bring back, and like kind of universal order restored, you know, if when Milan's gonna win the stage. So he's looking for that, and the team is committed as well. I mean, if you will look what we saw yesterday, lose the jersey of Ciccone, the Maglia Rosa, but because the team is much more unbalanced to Jonathan Milan rather than the GC, the general classification. So he has the team to support him. I just think he had to do things right one time, and it's going to be good.
Ben O'Connor got a little bit of extra clothing with him, both in his pocket and in his hand. Haven't seen much of Ben O'Connor. He hasn't really been put to the test yet. Still handily placed in the general classification. Hasn't lost any time of note to anyone who matters. But the tests begin tomorrow for riders like Ben O'Connor. Jaco Alula also riding, of course, for the big German Pascal Ackermann today, a former 2-time stage winner of stages at the Giro d'Italia. And he's the only man we thought might have launched a long early attack. He might still try and get up the road, because actually it's not that far until we get to the only climb of the day. Get to the top of the Cava di Tirreni with 100.9k to go. So we're only 30 kilometers from the top of that climb. And that could be the moment that we get a breakaway going, and it could be that Sevilla will pick that moment with one or two teammates. That's what he's done to this point in the race, up the road in Bulgaria on all 3 days, once with Mirko Maestri though, once on his own and once with Alessandro Tonelli, as
we might
quite rightly point out to me that we've got a two-up attack from Alpecin Premier Tech.
One is Edward Plancard. To be seen if it's a jokey one or serious.
Yeah, I'm not committing to it yet, Jacopo.
I saw a smile on the face of Edward Plancard, so let's hope it's a real one. The other rider is the Italian Luca Vergallito. Cross our fingers that this is the breakaway. Seems a little bit more commitment as two riders for Bardiani opens up and trying to rejoin the front.
Okay, now we've got a bike race.
Yeah, and everybody reacts. As well, Jonas Ruch, if I'm not mistaken, for Lotto Intermarché.
Yeah, definitely. It's that rocking style of the big German. I tell you what, Jacopo, when was the last time that we saw in a Grand Tour, two Alpecin riders off the front together?
Was when Mathieu van der Poel was with Jonas Riekert.
Exactly.
Did he win that? No.
No, but he was caught in the final kilometre.
Yeah.
But it was very, very exciting, wasn't it? And they're at it again. This time, though, it's Edward Plancard and Luca Vergallito, the young Italian, on his wheel. But it has ignited the race, and Jonas Ruch looks like he's... well, they haven't got clear. And those Bardiani, that two-up Bardiani attack has been brought back as well. So we've just got those two riders from Alpecin Premier Tech off the front by 10 seconds. What motivated them to do that?
Show the jersey, I guess. I mean, they've been left without their leader, the supposed leader, with the Caden Groves retiring the other day after the horrible crash in the first stage. And they got an option today, as we think Jensen Plowright is gonna go for the sprint. He's gonna give it a go on today's sprint. But the team decided to launch an attack on mano a mano with two riders, Luca Vergallito and Plancard.
Just holding a 10-second gap. The option is there for teams to try and do what Ruch and Bardiani did, to get across. It's not done yet, but it doesn't seem as if anybody wants to try and get across to them. Yeah,
but this attack sparked a little bit of the reaction of those teams been left without sprinters, and Alpecin, Premier Tech, and as well Lotto Intermarché. They lost Arnaud Delis in first place, and then Milan Mente, both for the same stomach problem they were enduring since they've been in Italy and in Bulgaria before. So those teams sort of, they found they need to rebalance kind of they ambitious during this race. They might well go out and look to an opportunity. You know, I think like Alpecin Premier Tech, as you mentioned, they're kind of fond of this kind of attacks. Two people, two riders in it, and they're gonna try again. I mean, it's this kind of breakaway, you know, like we saw in the stage of Sofia, that sometimes like the peloton is so sure that okay, we can catch them whenever we want. That sometimes they even wait too much, you know.
Yeah.
And last time in Sofia, the three-man breakaway was caught just 500 meters before the finish, because the peloton thought, oh, we're gonna get them whenever we want. So why not? And maybe even Alpecin Premier Tech thinking like, okay, we give it a go and we see if the peloton is there to risk also with us.
Seems to be Edward Plancard doing most of the work on the front, but they'll start to share it a little bit.
Edward Plancard himself, he could sprint in such a stage. It's usually a dedicated sprinter. Last year, he was involved in something quite unique, having signed for the Suda Quick Step team before declaring that he didn't want to move and renegotiate the terms and stay instead of Alpecin Premier Tech. As Anand Hatherley, rider from South Africa, mountain biker, very talented mountain biker, yet a very good Tirreno time trial this year.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Haven't seen anything of him just yet, but we haven't seen much of Jaco Alula. They've still got their complete team. Koen Bouwman was up the road in the late breakaway yesterday, trying to replicate his victory into Potenza, but picking up a top 10 finish. Other than that, Ben O'Connor has kept his powder dry, and Pascal Ackermann hasn't really been threatening to win a stage yet.
he was in the mix in the first stage, and he managed to get a 6th place, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, not quite the results we were expecting from Pascal Ackermann, being able to win three stages already in this very good race, being able also to coming home with the Maglia Ciclamino. But seems like it's not at the same level already since 2-3 years. As it's having a hard time coming back at the old glory was having when he was with the color of back then was the Bora Hansgrohe team.
Well, chapeau to these two. They have given the race structure and purpose. Edward Plankett and Luca Vergalito from Alpecin Premier Tech attacking, and they're building up the best part of a minute's advantage. I've thought of another occasion when there was at a Grand Tour a famous two-up attack from riders from the same team, again, which went very, very surprisingly deep into the stage. It was a stage of the 2016 Tour de France that finished in Bern in Switzerland. And Peter Sagan won the stage on an uphill finish, but for at least 180 kilometers, Tony Martin and the very young Julien Alaphilippe were off the front riding for Quick-Step.
Was 16 then, I can tell you that.
2016, yeah.
No, 6. You said, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
And yeah, I was involved in the chase again, breaking your dreams with Katyusha. Was Alexander Kristoff was second on the line, just got beaten by Peter Sagan, and you know why? Because Alex Kristoff didn't properly saw it was the boulevard of the finish line was under trees, and there was a lot of shadows and sunny spots, and he didn't saw the correct line, and he didn't do the tiger jump.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I remember that finish line very, very well that day. As Unibet Rose Rockets and Soudal Quick-Step and Lidl Trek start to share the work, just to control this little breakaway of two riders. But the interesting thing about that day with Tony Martin and Julien Alaphilippe was the way that the idea had come from Tony Martin. It wasn't something that any of the DSs in the car had signed off on. There was no agreement. It was just Tony Martin just trying his luck, and he said to Julien Alaphilippe, "Come with me." And Alaphilippe was a very young rider. He didn't have the big reputation that he got a few years later then. And they got the little gap, and then Davide Bramati in the team car called them back. He said, "Look, this is just embarrassing. We're a big team. Quick-Step don't do this kind of thing. It's a sort of like it's a move for a small team. Don't embarrass the team." And Tony Martin completely refused to come back. And Julien Alaphilippe was just did what Tony Martin told him to do at that point. And then bit by bit, Bramati started to go, well, fair enough then. I mean, actually, this is quite good. And the deeper they went into the stage, the more they believed they could do something extraordinary. I think, when did you catch them? Just on the outskirts of Bern?
Yeah,
it was pretty close, wasn't it?
There was a little drag entering the city of Bern. I think it did happen there. And I also remember Bramati coming from, no, this is completely insane what you're doing, from like really screaming. Yeah.
When he realised it was actually a really good move. And I remember there was a brilliant shot of that I think the Quick-Step's own film crew captured from inside the car, where Bramati's team car comes up alongside Martin and Julien Alaphilippe, and Julien, with the window rolled down, just shouts into the car. He shouts, "I can't make him stop." Tell him to stop. And then the camera moves forward to Tony, and Tony's just not even looking at the car, just doing his Panzerwagen thing. So, how deep into this stage are the pair from Alpecin Premier Tech going to go? Edward Plankett and Luca Vergalito. Here's the white jersey wearer, Igor Arieta, the winner of yesterday's stage, in high emotion. Incredible emotional day it was when he bloodied, and you can see he's got bandages on probably both arms, and he won the Combativity Award with the red Dossard number.
Fair enough.
You could have given it to Eulalio as well, but that's definitely fair enough for Igor Arieta. Just looking at the report from the commissaires, every day there's a printed story of the day, and the key moments in the race are documented, and it says that Arieta, with 2 kilometers to go, had a 14-second time gap to make up on Eulalio, and with 1 kilometer to go, he had 7 seconds to make up. 14 seconds, though, with 2K to go, to chase that rider down. Very, very strong ride by Arieta.
Yeah, I think he really shows the commitment from this young Spanish rider. Against all the odds, because at that point we all thought like, okay, the race is over once again. It was constantly a ping pong between the two riders, like with the unlucky sides, and I think both for a few moments they thought like, I might as well win this race, I might as well lose in this race, and it was a constant up and down, I think, in emotion for both of them.
Tyrrhenian coast, the waves crashing in, being whipped up by a wind that's coming from the west, blowing inland. As it does make landfall, this wind, if you look at a detailed weather map, you'll see that once they actually move a little bit inland, they'll be sheltered from the worst effects of the wind. But while they're on the coast, they'll feel it very strongly. Not giving them much time, are they? 43 seconds.
Yeah, I think they scared in a way of what would happen later on, you know, if they let them having too much of a gap. And at the same time, maybe they're going to slow down, but this is going to be the case if, I mean, I hope they go along with what my prediction, but I hope they're going to stay all day at 42nd and eventually getting closer and closer to the finish. And on a moment, we're going to be here thinking like if they can make it or not, because they're going to keep the same amount of gap. I don't know if they want to shut this down, because as you see at the front, probably they slow it down a little bit as well. They had to, because the day for them is still long, and if they want to stand a chance, that's the way to go. You need to take it easy. You need to, you know, kind of surfing as long as you can, you know, keeping the speed high without too much of energy expense. And if they eventually they will do so, and allow them to try a little bit harder later on.
Visma Lease bike on the front as well. So it's a mixture of, well, it's lots of GC teams actually, as well as Tobias Lund Andersson's team Decathlon have a sprinter and a GC rider, but Victor Campenaerts and Visma Lease bike definitely don't have a sprinter. They're just interested in the general classification. 36 seconds. I can't think that they would want to shut this attack down, because if they do that, they're getting closer to that climb, and that might just encourage counter-attacks. I mean, potentially a bigger breakaway group, that bit closer to the line.
We saw also that all the teams were in, yeah, kind of maybe not willing to go straight into the breakaway, but then there was a reaction once the duo from Alpecin Premier Tech hit the road. So why not? Maybe later on we're going to see some more attacks if they get too close to the Alpecin Premier Tech duo, Edward Plankert and Luca Vergallito. There's a little bit of clouds, dark clouds, looming at the background for the peloton. Here in Naples is some gray clouds charged with a lot of rain. Let's hope it's not gonna fall again. It was heavily raining before at about 12 o'clock. It stopped now. It's sun is shining.
I tell you what, it's a relief that it's dry, isn't it? Because these cobblestones in the final kilometre, in the wet, as I think Jonathan Milan alluded to in his interview, they would be very dangerous.
Yeah, we both, me and Ned, went to do a little recon of the last 600 meters. We had the time to, to witness with our own eyes how does it look like. And when I went there, Ned, it was still a little bit wet, and even with the shoes, I was losing grip.
It's that volcanic, dark grey volcanic rock, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when those cobblestones, over hundreds of years, they've been worn down. They're very, very shiny, aren't they? And as soon as they get a bit of water on them, they're slippery. Very slippery.
And plus that, the roads are literally on the sea. And I don't know the English term for that. It's salsedine, so like all the deposit that the breeze from the sea is going to bring. Yeah. It makes them very, very slippery.
Well, they've committed to it now. There's no turning back. 120 kilometres to go. 39 seconds their lead. They're just being held out there on a very straight road where the peloton can actually just keep their eye on them as well. They'll see them just up the road while the time gap is as small as it is, just 39 seconds. It's interesting that no one team or collection of teams has really taken control of the peloton, that they're all just riding sort of 10 teams abreast.
I think it's a little bit of precautious from the GC team just to stay up front and I think it's just in case of, in case the wind picks up a little bit more, in case there are chances of echelons, they want to be seated there. I don't think it will today. The wind doesn't. It's good. It's strong enough.
And besides, when was the last time we had echelons in the Giro d'Italia?
Oh,
it never happens.
It's very hard for me to believe it, but there was in recent years.
It never happens.
Yeah. I think it comes to mind Sardinia when Gaviria won and Bob Jungels took the leader jersey, but it was long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange thing that the Giro d'Italia is not a race that produces echelons. Almost never. It's partly to do with the topography, although sometimes you do wonder why it doesn't happen more often, especially when we're in the Po River Valley, which can be very flat. But maybe you just don't get the strength of wind in that valley that you do elsewhere in like the centre of France and places like that.
Yeah, and I'm living not far from the Po Valley, actually, at the very end of it, and very often it's windy, actually, and I always wonder, like, oh, what if a race comes in here today? It would be echelons. But yeah, as you mentioned, it seems like it never quite hit or either in the right direction or at the right moment. And also I think during the spring, the wind usually goes down a little bit in strength as well.
I have another theory about why echelons are very rare at the Giro d'Italia. Although I'm looking at a total contradiction here, because he's a rider who can create. He's a one-man echelon machine. Filippo Ganna, he could do some damage, but the peloton of the Giro d'Italia is normally is full of climbers and climbing domestiques, and those riders who've just come to the end of their classics campaign, and they've raced hard at Catalonia, at Algarve, they've done the UAE Tour, they've done races like that, and then the classics campaign. A lot of those who are the specialists in crosswinds, they've actually paused for a bit and gone off to train. So it's not by definition, it's not a peloton that's full of classic specialists who really relish the idea of ripping the race apart in the wind. So I think that might be a factor as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and at the same time, the parcours itself of the Giro d'Italia usually was always a little bit harder than the Tour de France, as the Tour de France very often, features some stages where you had echelons, and also, as you said, the lineup of the Tour de France features way more.
They come back.
Classic,
then,
classic riders from the Belgium races. They're back for the Tour de France. So I think it's also a reason. So you pointed out correctly that even if the weather conditions are good, not having a classics rider can make a difference in how the peloton itself behaves.
For example, here's a little statistic that kind of proves my point. One of the recent riders in recent times who's been a master of crosswinds is Luc Rowe, who's now retired. He's a director sportif with Decathlon Editoire. He rode 10 Grand Tours in his career, did the Vuelta twice, the Tour de France 8 times, and the Giro d'Italia never.
Zero. Yeah. Even Tom Bonen was almost never featuring at the Giro, if not at the very end of his career. Another probably one of the best Belgian rider for the classics we had in recent years. So it's a clear indication that very often the riders from Belgium, they are not featuring in the Giro d'Italia. Nonetheless, everybody's sitting at the front because they want to have this positioning. Is a kind of an insurance for them. I might as well spend a little energy, stay seated at the front. This goes also in favor of the sprinting team, as they don't have to control this very moment. And basically the gap is kept at 39 seconds because of this. I don't want to say stressful, because it's not stressful, the peloton, but they all want to be sure that they have a good position within the peloton.
I mean, the road is very exposed here, as you can see. The wind is easily strong enough to do some damage, but the wind direction isn't quite right, I don't think, either, to cause real chaos. So it's a little bit too much of a headwind about it.
Yeah, the best direction would be having the wind from side at the back, so like let's say 45 degrees on your back and sides, rather than like they have today, which is 45 degrees in the face and side. So it's just not the right direction. Nonetheless, you experience a little bit of it, a little bit that you feel better if you stay on the right side of your teammates, but it's not good enough to have a very fast speed and break the peloton in pieces.
The wind forecast is due to get stronger throughout the afternoon, actually, and then die away a little bit in the evening. These two riders might have hoped that they'd be given a little bit more time, but they've only got this 40-second time gap to work with. Team car has been pulled forward. They do have the support of their Alpecin Premier Tech team car in the gap.
And despite the gap not being near a minute, and normally rules from the UCI is you can have a car after a minute of gap in between the groups.
Afonso Eulalio will be hoping that he has a day in pink that's a little bit more comfortable than poor Giulio Ciccone's yesterday. That was a horrible day for Giulio Ciccone to have to try and hang on to, well, to celebrate his first ever Maglia Rosa and to be in the lead of the Giro d'Italia. Brutal, brutal stage, and his team were really put to the sword. Not only that, but I think Ciccone was suffering, like so many other riders, from the extreme weather and the cold that affected the race yesterday. But a really difficult day for Ciccone and for Lidl-Trek.
Yeah, it was seen really shivering, the lips shaking by the cold he was enduring at that point. And yeah, it was in a way kind of sad image seeing Ciccone, the leader of the GC, at the front, you know, like try to honoring the jersey while he was still wearing it and leading the reduced peloton that was heading to the finish line. He was not really pushing out on the pedals as the breakaway was still gaining time, but it was more like probably an homage and probably just you know, for the proud of wearing this jersey and kind of showing to the people. Although yesterday was fully covered in rain clothes, but nonetheless, I think it was his way of respecting the leader jersey of the Giro d'Italia.
You notice how Jonas Vingegaard is at the front, but not on the front. He's got his teammates, they're actually putting their nose in the wind. Victor Campenaerts, etc., Tim Rex, Timo Kielich, they're the riders doing that. But he is, and this has been a hallmark, this has been a feature of his approach to the opening week of racing here all along. Jonas Vingegaard, incredibly switched on. His positioning has been perfect all the way along, and just that little moment on stage 2 where he set up that little attack, and other than that, he's just been on
controlling duties, I would say.
Yeah, just controlling the circumstances, I think, just eliminating the risk at every point.
And I think also that attack was in light of this, just like being able to approach the descent in the best possible position, which in that case was the front, but not really to go on the attack of the GC or the Maglia Rosa. Is so far it seems like a very relaxed Jonas Vingegaard. I think he has changed over the years. You know, if you think of Jonas the first years, you know, was a little bit more serious. And here it's pretty relaxed. You know, you just have to do the things right. You know, not taking risks, and he was coming with a very good shape, so it doesn't have to do too much, you know, in a way to take this home. And at this point, especially of the race, there's going to be a lot of harder stages later on, and now he doesn't have to take any risk. He just have to serve to dive himself into those stages and get us, you know, get him through them. Later on, there's going to be plenty of room for him to attack.
Good support by the side of the road there. Youngster maybe watching the Giro d'Italia pass by for the first time in his life. Maybe he watches it every year, because this is the 6th successive year that a lot of these roads have been used. There's always basically one way of approaching Napoli, and it's from the east or the southeast up the coast towards Napoli and then inland. We always approach the Napoli stage from the south, rather than on our way back down or down the peninsula. It tends to be from the south upwards. Feels like it's just calmed down a little bit at the front, or there's a little bit less anxiety about the weather conditions, and the time gap's grown a little bit. They've just eased up. 1:08 is the biggest advantage that the two attackers have enjoyed since they went off the front.
There is patience for Bahrain victorious ahead of Eulalio, Johnny Moscon, Damiano Caruso, Nico Dens, Mick van Dijk and Oliver Nazen. All in there just with the target of a little bit controlling and make sure that nothing happened, but it's very unlikely that any team or any riders is willing to open up an echelon, as we said. Not the right condition for it.
And especially not now as they head into the city of, is this Salerno?
Salerno is...
There it is, yes it is. So they're going to get that wind, which is coming off the coast, will be, they'll be protected from it by the buildings at the side of the road.
Yeah. And soon they're gonna, basically, instead of continuing to the coast, which will lead them to the famous Costiera Amalfitana, they will turn a little bit inland and basically doing, can we say, a loop around the Vesuvio?
Yeah,
just
kind of 3/4 of the way around.
Yeah, avoiding to pass underneath it. So because you have either way to reach Naples from Salerno, and both they need to go around the Vesuvio, either to stay on the coastline or either inland, and this time they're going to go inland, getting towards Ottaviano, Saviano, all the outskirts villages around Naples.
So as they head away from the long straight coastal roads, we've got another counter-attack, and it's kicking off a bit, and it's Manuele Tarozzi. There's a reaction straight away from Mattia Pais and Martin Macialusi.
And we might as well have 5 riders at the breakaway.
Yep.
And it can be a consistent breakaway, you know, having only to cover 110 kilometers and showing the application from those riders. So yeah, that's good.
Good move. Time gap of around about a minute they've got to ride across to the front of the race.
I think once the riders at the front, Edward Plancart and Luca Vergalletto are going to be informed about this attack. If they realize they're gonna, the peloton will let those riders moving away from them, they're gonna slow down, you know, eventually waiting for them. Because with a group of 5, I mean, you can have a chance, or at least it's not, how can I say, that easy and for granted to, you know, catch them before the line. So if they play it well, they might stand a chance, a tiny chance, but still it's something to go with.
Well, we've got 3 point. This explains this move from Bardiani, I think. 3.4 kilometers to go until the only categorized climb of the day, the Cava di Tirreni. Doesn't carry much reward. It's a category 4 climb with 3, 2 and 1 points available at the top. But if Tarozzi were to get across to the front and take the climb, then he would move up a little bit in the King of the Mountain standings. Diego Sevilla's lead won't be challenged, but Tarozzi would move up to 4th place and close the gap just a little bit to Sevilla. Halfway there, 34 seconds they've got to make up. There's a lot to like about Manuele Tarozzi, and he's a good rider, isn't he? Otherwise, there's no way he would have been present in that breakaway yesterday. He was there, and he earned his right to be in that break.
And now we finally have some proper controlling from other riders. I think it's also in light of avoiding other teams to go on the attack. Is De Vries again for Unibet Rose Rockets. The French squad, although started off as a Dutch team, changed flag only recently.
EF Education Easy Post are another team that could attack now. Could try and get riders off the front, maybe closer to the finishing line in Napoli. Wouldn't be totally surprising to see them try and launch a late raid. Likewise, Intermarché with Jonas Rutsch, they've already tried to get disrupt things. They haven't got a sprinter any longer to work for. They do, however, have a rider who's in sparkling form in the general classification, Lennart van Eetvelt, and they've got a big day to look after him tomorrow as well. And they've not got many riders left. After yesterday, they lost further to Arnaud Delis. They lost Milan Menten and they lost Josh Giddings as well. So they're 3 riders down. It was Tarozzi who went first, and then there was the counter-attack. Good move by Marcellusi. He was very live to that, wasn't he, and followed the wheel of the Polti Visit Malta rider.
I think the presence of one Polti Visit Malta riders, in this case is Mattia Bais, is more in light of taking away the point to Tarozzi. Is true, as you said, it's not gonna, you know, put the jersey of Sevilla in danger. But nonetheless, I think that those points, if they can be taken away from Tarozzi, the team is be more than happy to do so, and I think they're gonna use Bais for that.
Not too far now to go for Tarozzi, Marcellusi and Bais. Nobody off the front of this race is a threat in the general classification whatsoever. The best placed of the riders, though, off the front is Manuele Tarozzi. But he's over 5 minutes down on the real GC favourites himself, so let alone the actual leader of the race at the moment, Eulalia.
Soon they're gonna rejoin the front of the race. Only 14 seconds between the two groups. And once they're gonna hit Cava dei Tirreni, the start will begin. It's gonna be 6.4 kilometers, a very mild 3%. Is front of the race is Edward Plancard and Luca Vergallito in the background, as you probably saw. Happy the trio. Marcellusi, Tarozzi and Bais.
Another thing that Manuele Tarozzi can achieve here is halve his deficit, potentially, to Diego Sevilla in the overall breakaway prize.
Yeah, because yesterday, unfortunately for Tarozzi, although it was a very demanding task to win the breakaway, there were more than 10 riders.
8, 10? Yes, it's 10, isn't it, the rule? So it didn't count. So all
Yeah.
those kilometres on that long stage yesterday didn't count for Manuele Tarozzi. He's still got a 200-kilometre deficit to make up on Diego Sevilla, but if he stays off the front for 100 of these now, that would halve the gap that he's got to make up. And another bike change, getting his first bike back for Jonathan Milan. He's had a little bit of work done on it.
Yeah, they fix it, and as we often say, the riders prefer to ride on the bike number 1. Even a slight used saddle can make a lot of impact on how you pedal and the position. So the riders, when they have the chance, when they have the time, they rather stay on the first bike rather than race on the spare one. As the start of the climb, beginning of the climb for the front of the race, and soon for the 3 riders just appeared on your screen.
That is not the most severe gradient that you're going to see in the Giro d'Italia. Average gradient of just under 3%, so barely a climb at all to speak of, more of just an uphill sector of this parcours. And it's 6 kilometres, 6.2 kilometres left of this climb as Bais brings Tarozzi and Marcellusi across to the front of the race. And we've got 5 riders then: Plancard, Vergallito, Bais, Marcellusi and Tarozzi. And a bigger advantage than they've had at any point so far since they attacked of 1 minute and 21 seconds. 5 riders off the front, 107 kilometres to go. And all of a sudden, that is a breakaway, I think, that you have to take a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, this could be a serious threat later on. I mean, it's only 100 kilometers for them to just go for it, you know. And yeah, it's going to be challenging for the peloton. Very happy to have this situation, you know.
Well, we're in the region of Campania now, in which Naples sits. With its very developed coast. And those wild mountains that fall straight into the ocean. Naples as well, of course, a huge port, very busy port. And the Bay of Naples itself always being crisscrossed by both commercial and military maritime activity. It's a very, very busy and significant coastline here. It's our third different Italian region since we've been back on Italian soil after Calabria and Basilicata, crossing into Campania now. And tomorrow we'll be in Abruzzo.
Yeah, the race is going to start Campania, heading to the mountains of Blockhouse in Abruzzo. But first, we've got a sprint to witness, and today that's what the riders are looking for. From Cave dei Tirreni now they're going to be coming into the mountains. I'd rather call them hills rather than mountains, maybe.
I think they are mountains, it's just they're not going over the biggest roads in these mountains. It's a pretty flat parkour today. This is just the only real testing point in terms of climbing. Time gap's been adjusted back a little bit. They've got, according to that measure, 51 seconds as they leave Salerno behind them and head north in a northerly direction. The coast then continues west. They're going north and then towards the eastern flank of Mount Vesuvius, one of two active volcanoes, of course, in Italy, the other one being on the island of Sicily, the mighty Mount Etna. But Vesuvius is, I hate to say it, but well overdue an eruption. You were telling me, it was scaring the hell out of me yesterday as we approached our hotel room driving towards Naples, that underneath this entire region there's a super volcano.
Yeah.
And that Vesuvius is just a minor little chimney.
Yeah, if I mean, it's like the same, some of the Americans might listen to us, that lays in the Bay of Los Angeles.
Yep.
So it's all the area around the Naples is a giant gulf, is a giant volcano underwater, and there's always been active. He's still active, and I mean, latest news were like there are no signs of
seismic activity.
Yeah, but yep. I don't know. I mean, would you feel comfortable?
I remember, was it last year or a couple of years ago, there had been some earthquake tremors, either the day before or the day we arrived, or?
It's very active. I mean, it was last year.
Was it last year?
It was last year, and it's a very active area because, yeah, earthquakes goes along with volcanoes, and yeah, it's very active, especially around Pozzuoli, which lays at the north of Naples. It's a very active area, and well, I think the people from Naples and all the Gulf, they pretty much live with that, and well, let's hope it's not happening actually, because I don't know.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. And the peloton is on this climb as well, as they climb away from sea level and away from Salerno up into and up and over this little headland, switching direction now and heading in a northerly direction eventually towards Naples, and approaching 100 kilometers to go. They go over the top of the Cave dei Tirreni with 100.9k. Matteo Sobrero bringing Jonathan Milan back to the peloton on his birthday. Not Milan's, that is, Sobrero's. And a little bit further down the coast as we look at these live images of Salerno. It's incredibly beautiful, but it is, as we gaze at the San Giovanni Battista, St. John the Baptist church, it is quite overcast and almost looking as if it's threatening to rain again. At the finish line in Napoli, bright sunshine. Breezy, but bright sunshine. I have to say, repositioning the finish line, not far, but just a little bit more into the old centre of Naples, rather than being on that big coastal road, has completely changed the nature of this finale, and also gives a real sense of occasion to the Napoli stage today. From our commentary position, we're gazing at the Royal Palace. To our backs, we have the mighty cathedral and the race headquarters themselves, where all the administration of the Giro d'Italia is, where you pick up your accreditations, where the hotels are being organised, and where the jury, the UCI jury, sits to discuss the race afterwards. Well, that building is the big old castle.
Yeah, the Castelnuovo.
Which is, yeah, the Castelnuovo, which is probably the most impressive single building in this impressive city.
Yeah, it's an amazing city, Naples. I've been living dramatic, you know, picks up in numbers of tourists, because it's been put on the list of many touring guide, and it's a lively, very lively city. very specific, very distinctive. Also, like yes, we often, like in Italy, they have kind of an inner thing for themselves. You know, people from Naples, for their own food, their own music, their own culture. It's a very ironic people living here, and I personally love the city and the food, of course. As some of you might know, I was in a hunt for a pizza fritta, fried pizza yesterday. I succeeded with all my pleasure, but I think you have many, you know the pizza, and all of the world knows pizza. Naples and Caserta are the two main cities for pizza, and from there, from the idea of pizza, you can have thousands of different little recipe, pizza fritta, pizza portafoglio, calzone. I mean, it's endless, and you can never get tired of pizza, except probably you, Ned, as you a bit with Frieden. You told me that you're not a big fan. You were scared I would.
Well, I don't know. I hesitate to say it. I'm sitting here in the middle of Naples, and I'm not going to start saying rude things about pizza. But I think Italian cuisine and kitchen is amazing. It's just that pizza's not my absolute. It's not absolutely top of my list. And especially not fried pizza. Although I have to say, I hadn't really been aware of the fried pizza. I knew Napoli was famous for its pizza, but not so much the fried pizza. But now you've pointed it out to me. In the centre of Naples, all these little cafes are serving fried pizza. I hadn't realised it's quite such a widespread speciality.
I think it's like often we said, like it's funny how the people outside Italy see the Italian cuisine as healthy because we have olive oils, and actually I think all the regional cuisine features a lot of fried things. Like every regional country, regional cuisine in Europe. So we fry a lot of things, and in Naples they fry even a lot more things with the frittatine. You have oh my God, I forgot the other name, but a lot of fried things. So coming here, just get your chance to get a lot of good food, because it's a wonderful place to be.
So they're climbing up to the top of this little climb. Not much elevation to be gained. It's 200 meters above sea level. Got to get 200 meters up, and a little bit chilly at the top, just 18 degrees. Which in itself isn't chilly, but I think the wind is strong enough just to make it feel a bit chilly. And as you can see, Tarozzi's actually wearing arm warmers today.
Yeah, it's not overly warm, and I think it's the best temperature for to be on the bike. The weather is great, and I don't know whether Plancart want to go back to the peloton, as it seems like to me.
Yeah. Maybe that was the plan all along. He was doing more work than Vegalito. And Edward Plancart looks like he has delivered Vegalito onto this climb and now doesn't want to carry on. So over to you, Luca Vegalito, the sole representative now of Alpecin Premier Tech.
I think there might be a call from behind to rejoin the peloton, because Edward Plancart later on, despite they lost the leader for the sprint, Caden Groves, the Australian, they still have another Aussie that could be as well set up. Is Justin Plowright, his second card in line for Alpecin Premier Tech. Has been living off a good start of the season, being mostly uphill. Actually showed like some good forms in Paris-Nice especially, and I think that's the reason being of Edward Plancart being he detached himself rather than being dropped by the breakaway. And he's going to be soon rejoining the peloton.
Yeah, well, slightly surprising in the first place to see Plancart, because he does have a job to do, and Jensen Plowright could do a very good ride, but he will need a lead-out train, and Plancart is that man. So initially it was a little bit surprising anyway to see Plancart off the front, but he's been called back, or he's dropped back voluntarily. But Alpecin Premier Tech still have representation. Now we've got 4 Italians at the front of the race.
Yeah, today I think it's one of those sprints where you definitely need a teammate and a team to support you, because as much as the finale is quite twisty, we got 3 corners in 600 meters. Before that, there's going to be a lot of long stretch, straight lines, and you need to place yourself. You need to being able to position yourself without spending too much, and a team that's committed to you is vital in order to being able to do so.
Just got a few hundred meters now to go. You can see the arch there. That's the top of the climb. Mattia Bais, I think he's looking around, checking where Emanuele Tarozzi is. It's Tarozzi who is most interested in taking these 3 points. Bais's job is to try and prevent him from taking those 3 points, and Tarozzi's not prepared to try and fight Bais. Bais ensuring that he takes those 3 points, because his teammate, of course, Diego Sevilla, is leading that competition. Tarozzi, though, will roll over the line in 2nd place and pick up 2 points. But he didn't want to. It's interesting, Tarozzi. He's smart, isn't he? He didn't really want to expend a lot of energy going after Bais just for the prospect of 1 point in the King of the Mountains competition. Tarozzi is in this breakaway because he thinks they've got a chance of going deep into the stage.
Yeah, and that's even more good for us, because that shows that there's going to be commitment from those riders to go in the hunt of a stage victory. Although, as we said, very slight chances. Here you see a little bit of puddle on the roads. That's an indication that it was raining before. All the clouds, normally they would be moving away from the Napoli Gulf. Yeah, but nonetheless, coming back on the riders at the front, I think, I mean, in Sofia, it was not far off the chance of winning the stage. So
what a finish that was.
Yeah. And I think he's thinking, why not give it another go? I mean, we have 4 guys. The stage is not too long. It's under 40 kilometers. They went out on the road since 110 kilometers. So they're gonna just try and see if their luck, and if the day is gonna be, you know, smiling at them, we're gonna give them a little help.
Soudal Quickstep riding on the front now with Unibet, Rose Rockets and Lidl Trek. Sprinters teams taking over the responsibility of controlling the breakaway, and they're keeping them very, very tight indeed. Just 35 seconds the advantage of the 4 Italian riders at the front of the race. And a modest average speed so far into that headwind. Oh, news of a crash behind. Riders down, Movistar on the deck. Nico Dents is picking himself up from Red Bull Border Hansgrohe as well. And from Movistar, the rider just getting back on is Nelson Oliveira. So Dents looks like he's a little bit bashed up there.
Oh.
And a little bit confused, potentially.
I think he hit his head, eh? It looks like a bit... That's something like he should not do, and leave him on the ground.
Well, especially if he's feeling as groggy as he looks like he's feeling. So 2nd crash at an innocuous point. There it is, Dents just all on his own, and 3 riders actually going down. There
was some dirt on the road as he went down. It was not even too much inclination on his bike, and he hit his head very hard. I think it's a concussion in there for the German.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right, Jacopo. He's gone down extremely hard.
Even rider from
Ineos.
Net Company Ineos was.
So the doctor is on hand now, and they've seen the same pictures as we have, and they'll be aware that Nico Dents is a possible concussion victim here. They're going to have to hurriedly go through their checklist to see whether or not they advise that he can continue. That's all they can do. The doctors can't prevent the rider from continuing, but they will relay that information both to the rider and to the team management if they're present, and then it's down to them to take the decision as to whether or not to continue. The doctors can only advise at this point.
It was indeed very slippery from maybe some, you know, how do you say, fuel or soapy roads, some grease from the traffic. As you know, the speed was not too high, and they approached the corner in a very controlled manner, but was seen really just losing, completely losing the front wheel. But at the same time, other riders were involved in the crash for the same reason as well. On the inside, we saw a rider from Net Company Ineos almost losing control of the bike, and probably was because of the greasy road.
It just shows you, doesn't it? You can relax thinking this is just a straightforward, rather mundane trundle to the finish line in Napoli, and yet twice we've seen crashes out of nowhere featuring big riders like Nico Dents and Jonathan Milan. Dents looked in a bit of trouble there, it has to be said.
Also, Nelson Oliveira was involved in the crash, rider from Movistar. There was a 3rd rider on the ground, but we weren't able to see. Now we're going to see, yeah, it is Dents appearing. The front wheel completely slipped. Then Oliveira and also another rider for...
Red Bull.
Yeah.
So Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe have got 2, and Paul Magnier was very nearly brought down there as well. Just managed to avoid colliding with that second rider from Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe who went down.
That's what we said when we were talking about how slippery are those roads, and even if they're clean, it's just the being present, being close to the coast, to the line, you know, all the, how will you call it, this salty humidity coming off the sea.
Sea spray, yeah. Just leaves that sort of film of slightly salty residue on the road. Maybe that was it. Well, of course, that massive crash in the wet on the Napoli stage last year, there was oil on the road on that occasion.
Yeah, because we went up and the peloton was still quite far from the Naples, from the city, so it's a stage to be very attentive, because also what happened earlier, you know, when we saw Coulset and Sobrero going down, there was a lack of attention. This definitely was just unfortunate for Nico Dens with not yet informed if he managed to restart. We will see soon.
Just heard, actually, he has restarted, Nico Dens, so he has been given the all clear by his team to continue. So Nico Dens is back in the race. But the time gap is tumbling down now, 18 seconds. These riders are being ridden down by the peloton. And it did look like last time we saw the rider, I think it was Hartej de Vries from Unibet, looked like he was riding pretty hard. Don't quite know the reason for that, but the team car's been pulled out of that gap, and it's right down to 16 seconds. Now, will they ease up and allow the gap to grow again? Because I can't imagine they want to catch the breakaway right now.
Only 15 seconds for the breakaway, as GC teams appeared at the front.
Well, are they sensing the possibility of wind again on the road? Is that the reason why they've moved to the front, just a defensive move? If that's the case, then it's the worst possible news for these 4 riders. Because they're not riding down, they're not riding to bring the breakaway back, they're riding defensively. A shake of the head from Martin Marcellucci, who's understood the situation. I think that all the GC teams are moving towards the front, and if they carry on riding like that, they're just going to sweep the breakaway up like they don't even exist. But it looks like it might have calmed down a bit at the front. So let's watch that the progress of that time gap, see if it goes back out again. Net Company Ineos on the right. On the left of your picture now, Visma Lease Bike. Pseudo quick step with the white jersey, Lidl Treks, Amono Gebregsjabir, NSN rider, and Passions of Bahrain victorious, with the team, with his leader Eulalio and the leader of the Giro d'Italia on his wheel. They're picking up a bit more of a cross tailwind at this point, and I think that's the reason why there's a bit of vigilance at the front of the bunch with the big GC teams. And it also explains how the average speed has gone up a little bit, or the rolling speed at the moment. Both parts of the race are moving in excess of 46 kilometers an hour. Marked increase on the average speed of around about 40 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, and I think the rider at the front, the breakaway now on your screen, won't push harder on the pedal. They rather play a little bit, you know, with the peloton, and risking also to be caught. But the only way they have to have a chance in a stage like today is just to try to save as much as they could, you know, towards the end, and just wait for a moment where they're gonna really accelerate and try to hold off the peloton till the line. But at this point, you know, the gap is very narrow, very short, and that's what we were saying, like this could happen, you know, for a very long time, you know, that the peloton is gonna keep them outside, but when they're gonna speed up, it's not gonna be very easy to close even a 20-second gap.
Koen Bouwman.
I think he's talking about for the finale, for neutralization or some sort, because I mean the rider, they were a bit scared. I sense, I spoke to some of them, and they were a bit scared if it would rain, and I think it's an ongoing conversation about safety of today's stage in the finale, and as I understood properly, they're gonna see later what to do, pointed out from the jury.
Well, that is the first race director's car at the back of the peloton that contains the president of the jury, who is in charge of exactly that kind of thing, often in consultation with the race organisers themselves.
And I think I'm just guessing because I'm not aware. Probably Koen Bouwman is a representative for the CPA in the peloton. That's a dedicated rider that is in charge of negotiate or even do so talking with the jury when there is some sort of problem. So something needs to be fixed, and the riders want to be heard from the jury and from the race organizers. So I think it's been asked. That's my guessing. That's been asked to just do having a neutralized part at the end. This is something like I think would be accorded. Usually it happens, and I would not be surprised if there's going to be a neutralization of the last kilometers.
In the meantime, the gap to the breakaway goes back out to half a minute, 30 seconds. Just over 2 hours of racing still to go. Still with those 4 riders off the front together. And a slightly twitchy peloton. We've seen crashes for Jonathan Milan, Johannes Kulset, Matteo Sobrero, Nelson Oliveira, and Nico Dens, to name but 5. Stunning views from the top of this beautiful castle, the Palazzo Fienga. 19th century castle overlooking the town of Nocera. And it was built and constructed by the noble family, the Guibaldi di Nereto family. Has hosted art galleries and exhibitions down the years as the peloton just moves through a cloud of pink smoke. What have we got left on today's parcours? Well, we've got one intermediate sprint at 49 kilometres to go, and then we've got the Red Bull kilometres. Red Bull kilometre with the bonus seconds that if the breakaway is still out and off the front, they'll be neutralised by the breakaway. That's with 23.8 kilometres to go, so fairly close to the finish. But there's a good possibility that the break will sweep those bonus seconds up, which would, I think, suit the general classification teams.
It's the front of the race. Still 91 kilometers to go. Gap, they keep constantly this 30-second gap over the peloton. I don't think it's going to be allowed to grow more than this. But yeah, the parcours itself is not featuring any major danger in a way. It's pretty straightforward, but we saw, thanks to because of the rainfall that's been falling on the area earlier on today, some parts of the parcours were still wet, so adding a little bit more danger in some corners, some parts of it. It's windy, so it might dry out eventually. As Marcellusi leading the way, Luca Vergallito. It's a full Italian breakaway today. Noleta Rozzi and Davide Bais.
Yeah, Mattia Bais and Martin Marcellusi have been in, I think this is their 3rd breakaway that they've shared at World Tour level so far this year. They were in the move on stage 4 of this year's Giro d'Italia together. Also, they were up the road in Milan-San Remo with one another as well, so really familiar. Yeah, familiar to each other.
I mean, Tarozzi was present in basically it's the 4th breakaway of his Giro d'Italia at the only 6th stage. So very, I mean, very much present all day. Along with the Sevilla. I think those 2 riders that were the biggest presence in the breaker in those days.
News came through earlier today that Felix Engelhardt, the German rider, wouldn't be starting for Jaco Alula. Disappointingly for him, falling ill yesterday, or the day before yesterday actually, and suffering through yesterday. Not starting on stage 6.
I should put to him to finish a stage like yesterday when you already have fever.
Incredible.
I mean, yesterday was an incredible, and not in a good way, I mean, in this day for the riders to be, because the rain was falling hard. It was a thunderstorm for, how many times it seemed like it was opening up, the sun was coming up, and then it started pouring rain on the riders under this thunderstorm. The only moment we witnessed, some sun, and the riders were able to enjoy a little bit warmer temperature, was indeed the last kilometer, basically. But before that, it was a constant shifting in between, dark clouds and torrential rain. There was not a single moment where they were able to warm themselves up. So I think it was very brave from Engelhardt to just resist, and not giving up yesterday while he started the stage already with some fever.
So that's the vital information about the mighty Mount Vesuvio. Its summit there, not particularly high, the altitude there, but it's shrouded in cloud. Often when you visit Naples, you can smell the sulfur hanging in the air from the volcanic gases that permeate around here. Last exploded in 1944, and every time I come here, I ask some of my Italian colleagues, what's the plan? What is the plan if it erupts again in terms of evacuating this enormous population that lives around Naples?
Yeah, I think it's more, if you take the outskirts of Naples as well, it's more than 1 million of people living here. I have no idea. I have to be honest. I assume there is a plan. I don't know how you can put in place a plan, but I assume there is. And also, I don't know if, for the nature of this kind of volcanoes, that can happen that it's very unexpected, or that you can eventually figuring out. I don't know how can you evacuate such a large area and a large city as it is Naples and the outskirts of it, but I guess there is a plan.
I think we just have to trust that there is a plan. As Manuele Tarozzi is trying to take off his gloves, or just adjust his gloves, and we saw a bit of that yesterday from Tarozzi in the pouring rain, trying to get his soaking wet rain gloves off and then on, and it took him about 15 kilometers to get one of his gloves on. Unibet Rose Rockets doing the work. De Vries, Hartis De Vries. It's the same ride as always, isn't it? Emmanuel Grubegshebir, and in the white jersey of Soudal Quickstep with that little plaster on his cheek. It's Aiko Bastins of Soudal Quickstep.
I was doing a little bit of research, and of course there is a plan. So there is a red area where they have to abandon the place, and a yellow area for possible ashes that includes 24 neighborhoods of Naples. And so for the red alarm, the villages, the neighbors, they need to be evacuated within 72 hours from the phase of the alarm.
I tell you what, imagine being the seismologists, the scientists who are responsible for deciding when you sound the alarm. What a huge responsibility that must be. It's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah. And
if it was me, I'd be like erring on the safe side all the time, and every 3 days I'd be issuing an alarm, just in case, in case.
And the area around it calls Campi Flegrei. That's the name of the area, of the volcanic area. And yeah, probably I would be like you as well. It's a huge responsibility. I don't think it's just one red button to press. I think there are more people involved in it, but nonetheless, huge responsibilities. And it's also fascinating me, I mean, I'm just going to do a little diversion into geology.
Go on.
I have a friend who is a geologist, and when I first met him, I was like, well, it's not something that might be interesting, I mean, into geology. And then it happened to me, I was in New York and I went to the Natural Museum, and there was this room just dedicated to geology, and I found out how interesting it actually is. I mean, the story of our planets is written in stones, and the amount of information you can get from a stone is astonishing. And it turns out it was the best part of the museum for me.
Well, there you go. No, you're right. Well, everything. I mean, but also it's a story of the Giro d'Italia, isn't it? Because, or indeed the Tour de France, or any of the great Grand Tours. Because as you pass through these big countries, whether it's Spain, France, or Italy, the colour of the roofs, of the houses, the colour of the stone through the buildings are built from completely changes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right here, we're looking at the Royal Palace opposite us, which is a kind of Renaissance building, and all the stonework. Well, there's red brickwork, which you'd see all over Italy, but the stonework itself, the columns, are all dark grey, and that's because this is all volcanic stone, igneous stone. Like you get in Sicily as well.
Yeah, you're right. It shapes the area, and that's the beauty of it. So I think for a volcanologist, I think that's the right term, not for in English.
Yes, exactly right.
It might be the place to be, the Campi Flegrei around Naples, or the Etna in Italy. So and it's also something like. It's the Vesuvius is the only inland, the only volcano in the inland of Europe. So it's the indication of how unique is the Italian territory. It's the only, I think, fair to say, one of the very few places. It features places that looks almost like Sweden with the Alps and the mountains close to Swiss and Austria, featuring Sicily, featuring volcanic. The Puglia is so different and yet so unique in each aspect and in each region of within Italy.
So some statistics about Portugal's contribution to leading the Giro d'Italia down the years. Drawing level now today with Ireland in 14th place on the all-time list. All of the Irish days wearing the pink jersey, those 18 days, came courtesy of one man, Stephen Roche. And that was all in one edition of the Giro d'Italia in 1987 as well. Famous year, of course, where Stephen Roche won the Tour de France, the Giro d'Italia, and the World Championship. A feat that people thought would never be repeated until it was repeated.
Yeah, but it did it long ago, and I mean, he can endure a couple of days with this jersey for sure, and it's going to be interesting to see where this jersey gonna bring him. I mean, Eulalia is just a recent, a newcomer for the pro peloton. He's only second year racing for a pro level. Has been in the Conti teams in Portugal, and last year was featuring at the Giro d'Italia, so he found his way to get in the Maglia Rosa, and why not? He can stay within it for some days.
Well, earlier on, Jacopo and I were talking about the race to Napoli, the stage one, a few years ago now, 3 years ago by Mads Pedersen, when Alessandro De Marchi and Simon Clark were caught with a couple of 100 metres to go, and it came down to a bunch sprint in the end. Jonathan Milan, incidentally, finishing in second place. But there was one rider who did an enormous amount of work, actually shutting down that breakaway, and it was very, very close as well. But he did the lion's share of the work, and that man is Emmanuel Gebreksepie, and he's at it again, riding on the front. He was instrumental in catching De Marchi and Clark on that day. It was an immense ride.
It's yesterday we called him the Swiss Army knife of the domestic. I mean, he's such a versatile rider when it's up to controlling the pace, because he did it yesterday, which was definitely a mountain day for the team. He's doing again today in a much more flat parcours, so he worth his weight in gold as the rider approaching what is going to be a similar cobbles today at the end.
Yeah,
the first part of the last, let's say, drag that will lead them into Piazza del Plebiscito is going to be featuring some much more traditional shaped cobbles, and later on some more, how do you call it, like a big
flagstones.
Flagstones,
okay. Yeah, the big wide ones. Yeah. I don't know why they're called flagstones, but they are.
But they're not, they're flat. I mean, it's too obvious, you think, as a name?
Yeah, that's true. Wild pools of the Unibet Rose Rockets towards the back. Haven't seen much of Pools. I'm sure as the race goes on, we'll see him up the road and represented in breakaways. He's one of the riders who, if he were to win a stage of the Giro d'Italia, the veteran Dutchman, he'd complete the set.
Guys have freshly moved to the Unibet Rose Rockets. They gather quite some talented riders, you know. But Poels definitely at the end of his career, but not the case of Dylan Groenewegen. So I think they were able to find them a unique position of signing good riders in a good way, you know, in trying almost to revamp them, to bring them back to old glory. But Poels was for a couple of years with the Astana team, winning last year at the general classification of Tour of Turkey. And why not? May repeat himself this year. Let's hope so. Very funny guy, very strong rider itself, been in the business for many years. So here with David Sevilla at the very back end of the peloton. Diego, my bad. It's the leader of the KOM classification. He's having a day off. I think yesterday he would have loved to be in the breakaway, but I think it was just too hard for him to being able to get in touch with within the first part of the breakaway.
Alan Hatherley. Sorry, my mistake. Wrong team. Mathis Rondel. And Rondel has had an adventurous Giro d'Italia, the rider in the black of Tudor Pro Cycling. He was the rider who catapulted himself through the back of the UAE Team Emirates team car yesterday.
Yeah, and luckily without consequences, as he was then back in the peloton and he managed himself to stay in touch with the GC contenders. A very fine, I don't know if you could call him a prospect. He's already a firm rider, definitely a young one, so still a lot to come for him, but he shows a lot of progresses over the years, and he's been signing a long contract with the Swiss outfit, Swiss outfit of Tudor Pro Cycling, and he's here to testing his first Grand Tour. Very young Frenchman. We're curious to see where he goes, where he lands, because it's a very good rider, and we can see now Nico Dent is back in the race, back at the peloton after what it looked like it was a concussion. He seemed like to be a bit confused for a few seconds there.
It looked like he'd been knocked out,
yeah,
just briefly, just for a second or two. It looked like he'd actually been knocked out and would come back to consciousness. But been passed okay. Yeah, Mathis Rondel flying through the rear window of a UAE Team Emirates car yesterday. That is a rare thing, but it does happen from time to time. But incredibly fortunate that he's okay and that he suffered no serious harm from what must have been a very dramatic accident. Let alone for if there are any passengers in that back seat as well, how they didn't get hurt, having an entire bike rider coming through the window, falling on top of you.
Possibly the first thing you might be scared of, like whether this crash had a consequence of the rider. Luckily, there was no harm for the young Frenchman. But nonetheless, a big accident yesterday occurred, and it was in the first part of the race. Actually, it happened. We saw passing the UAE team car. It was, I think, after 50 kilometers, or in the very early part of yesterday's stage. As you see, how cautious are all the wall riders in the peloton. They don't want to take any risks, and approaching all the corners in the safest possible way.
This Napoli stage has a habit of just producing drama, doesn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately for
one way or another.
last couple of years, last year especially, this year it's still pretty much safe so far. With crash, a big one. So let's hope that this year is going to be all good and just going to be about the legs and results of the riders.
Slightly wet roads, and it looks like the rain might be falling a little bit as Manuele Tarozzi once again does battle with his clothing. Spots of rain on the lens of the camera. The rain is falling out on the road where they are in the town of Sarno at the moment, and Tarozzi's just getting himself a rain jacket on, or trying to. And the sun's gone in a little bit. It's a bit more overcast here in Napoli. Some dark grey clouds have just rolled in over the hills a little bit, over the city. And it looks like the wind direction has switched a bit as well.
Yeah, we're constantly updating our apps and weather forecast apps to see if might be something that happens. So let's hope not, because it might get very dangerous for the riders. Even if the neutralization will come in place, you know, that means it's all the riders for the GC are going to be safe, but that doesn't mean that their stage won't be up for grab. And if you want to win a stage, you need to take risks. So let's hope that it's going to stay dry. There's still a long way for the peloton. A couple of hours still of racing before they're going to be hitting the final part, the last kilometers in this stage in Napoli. But still dry in here. Some clouds are looming over. Gabi disappeared from the front at the moment.
He did as soon as we started talking about him, actually. We just started talking about Gabi, and he actually disappeared. So Lidl Trek are not contributing to the chase at the moment. It's all down to Soudal Quickstep and Unibet Rose Rockets.
There is no need in theory at the moment. It's just sometimes you just do to give an extra push, an extra motivation to your leader. But they decided to save a little bit the energy. Yesterday, he spent a lot of energy. So I think they want to try to give him a little bit of, I would say, easier time. Oh, here is Kubic. I think he was involved in a crash. Probably not the same, because he has the pants ripped on the left side. So whether to be seen where that happened, it was not caught on camera. It was not the same as Nico Dent's, because that one was on a right corner, so they should have like the pant ripped on the right side. Seems like nothing serious, but nonetheless he was hitting the ground.
Maglia Rosa getting a pink rain jacket on as well. Unexpected Maglia Rosa. Don't think many of us would have predicted Afonso Eulalia would have been leading the Giro d'Italia on stage 6 with a big lead as well. How long can he survive in that jersey? Could be very interesting to see how well he climbs on the Blockhouse stage tomorrow. Still something of a mystery how Kubic suffered those ripped shorts. We do think that he might possibly have been caught up in that crash with Sobrero and Milan quite early on, Kubic, because we did see some other riders, including Johannes Kultek, go down in that, well, separately actually, but at the same point in the peloton, and maybe Kubic crashed at that point. But we'll probably have to wait until the race finishes and we can ask him ourselves.
Yeah. But he's definitely...
Oh, soaking wet roads again here.
And that's the Giro.
Yeah.
That's the Giro, when you think like you might have a dry day, day without rain, then end up showing you that you can control the weather in Italy in May. It's not cold today again, but nonetheless you would prefer to be riding on much drier condition. One thing you might expect to see later on after the rain will stop, some riders, because today the stage give you the opportunity to do so, they're going to be going at the back of the peloton to re-oil their chains, because usually what the team does, what the teams are using is a couple at least of different oils and grease for the bikes, because you need to have two different ones in case of wet condition or dry condition. I reckon, I think they might have started on a dry wax or oil, and today they're gonna have the need of coming back to the the team car and having redo an extra time. As here at the finish line, the Giro E just landed, and later on we're going to see some pictures also for your benefit.
Well, it'll be reassuring, I think, for the message to be got out to the peloton that for now the Napoli finish line is bone dry. All the cobblestones are completely dry. Let's hope that lasts, because it would completely change the nature of the final kilometre if it is a wet finish. It might even lead to a neutralisation. Certainly that's the suggestion that I think Koen Bouwman was addressing to the president of the jury. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But if there's this kind of conditions on those final cobblestones, I think it would be dangerous.
Yeah, and the response from the commissars were just wait a little bit, we're going to see later, but they open for this type of talk. It would make no sense to take risk losing a GC contender in such a finale, but nonetheless it's going to be very dangerous anyway for the riders involved in the sprint.
I discovered a new cycling word on the drive to the finish line today, Jacopo, that I'd never seen before. An English term which I'm going to start using now. When we actually drove the last few kilometres of the race route, or at least in part we did, and when we passed through the arch that said 5 kilometres to go, it also had another sign saying sprint zone, and I couldn't work out what that meant. And then you pointed out, well, that's the 5 kilometre rule, isn't it? After which the general classification is neutralised for accidents and mechanical incidents, and it's got a name, the sprint zone.
I think it's they apply this name on the banner also to just as a reminder to the rider. I don't think they'll ever notice this, but nonetheless it's another indication. Okay, remember today is the 5 kilometre rule. Normally in another flat finish is 3 kilometers.
Yes, it does vary, doesn't it, from stage to stage.
Now we have 3 difference. Before was just the 3 kilometer or nothing. Now, of course, when it's an uphill finish, there is no neutralization. So if you have a flat tire 1 kilometer from the top of hill, then you're going to go away with the time you got. Then you have the 3 kilometer neutralization. This comes in place when, for instance, you have flat finale, but not a bunch of sprint is expected. So let's say like such a stage in Cosenza. Cosenza actually is the best example, because despite being incredibly hard was the 5 kilometer rule, which is the last one. And the 5 kilometer rule applies when they expect a big bunch sprint.
Yep.
And today is the case. And the riders, whoever might be involved in either a crash or a mechanical problem that can cost him the position in the peloton, are going to be awarded with the same time the group they were part of, if this obviously happened in this 5 kilometer.
Got 25 kilometers to go until the day's intermediate sprint at Brusciano, as a big blast of wind just blows into our commentary booth. We've got our window open to the elements, and one of the signs actually just past the finish line has just blown off its mooring, and a member of the public is having to manhandle it to the ground, and that gives you an indication of just how strong the wind is here at the finish line in Naples. But in these big buildings, these grandiose buildings in this beautiful piazza that we are seated in, the wind is strong, but it's coming off the scene. It's buffeting and changing direction. It's quite unpredictable. And you often get that in cities on really windy days, Jacopo, that the wind can suddenly, if you pass between a gap between 2 big buildings, it can suddenly hit the peloton.
Yeah, it can channel in between, as you said, in between the roads in here. So today they're going to be stay mainly at the side, you know, along the coastline of Naples, before getting a little bit more inside, being covered by the harbor, the commercial harbor of Naples. But the finale here, like the wind, every time we open the door, maybe you hear some noise in our microphones. It's picking up quite strongly, the winds. And it was like a favorable wind towards the very last sprint, but it's going to be very hard to tell. We don't see any flag at the moment outside, but this could help a little bit the riders to go a little bit faster. But as currently Ned pointed out, I'm standing on my feet, so I cannot see.
Opposite our commentary position, there are two enormous flags, the European Union flag and the Italian flag, and it's completely changed. These flags are blowing straight down the finishing straight, actually, at the moment. So if the wind stays the same, the wind direction, the final 300-400 metres of today's finish will be into a very strong headwind and uphill as well, up until about 150 metres to go on potentially wet cobblestones.
Yeah.
So it's got 3 different layers of complication to it.
Yeah, it's not going to be, whatever the wind direction later on, it's not going to be a faster sprint, because with the cobbles and the slide, I wouldn't call it slide, it's actually a hard drag, you know, especially the last 300 meters. So it's not going to be fast. It's going to be quite hard for the riders to manage this, because you need to calculate a good moment to go on the attack, go out and try to hit in the road at the right moment. And well, luckily for the riders, it's a little bit more dry now.
Yeah.
Tarozzi doesn't feel confident to remove the jacket, as you see in the background a lot of dark clouds.
Doesn't trust the weather, Manuele Tarozzi, after his experience yesterday, as they move from winter to summer temporarily, and then maybe back into winter. The Giro d'Italia is playing with the peloton once again. First breakaway of this year's race for Luca Vergalito. He's not a young rider, he's a Milanese rider. He's actually 28 years of age, came to the sport at the professional level quite late in his career. I think he was 25 when he first signed pro.
Yeah, he was an amateur rider, just a hobby rider, I would say. And he started cycling, I think, on a very late, already as a grown-up, and big fan of you know, preparation and trainings and this sort of stuff. And he got himself qualified for the Zwift Academy, this virtual cycling, been sponsored of Alpecin Premitech. So basically, if you apply and you manage to get on board with the Zwift Academy, you have a chance, you know, to land on a professional contract. He did eventually. He was, I think, for a couple of years with the Devo team before making his pro debut with Alpecin Premitech last year. And well, that's also probably something unique in the modern era of cycling, no? That you can land and can get a pro contract by winning a virtual race. So imagine winning at video game of Formula 1 and being driving one of those the very next year.
Well, some riders
quite different.
Graduated with a great deal of success through the Zwift Academy as well. I think probably the most notable achiever in that regard is Jay Vine, who crashed out on stage 2, but he's a multiple stage winner of stages of Grand Tours at the Vuelta a España, and that was exactly the route that he rose to prominence on. Jonas Vingegaard has got a rather billowing rain jacket, not particularly tight-fitting, and for once he has dropped back, possibly having been to the team car, possibly for a call of nature, but it's quite unusual to see him there in this year's Giro d'Italia. More often than not, his team are right up towards the front.
Gap is kept on a very controllable distance of 40 seconds. In a little detail of the bike of Tarozzi. Nice touch. No, it was the bike of Marcellusi. My bad. It was nonetheless De Rosa, sponsor of the Bardiani CSF Sabre, or 7 Sabre. It's actually a CSF 7 Sabre. It's in Italian we say scioglilingua.
And what does that mean?
That's it's something like with a repetitive S or R. It's like hard to say. If you say very like fast, it's very
a tongue twister.
Tongue twister.
A tongue
okay.
twister in English, yeah.
Like sciogli means like when you unknot something.
Yeah.
Untie a knot.
Manuele Tarozzi is a fiddly rider, isn't he? Really likeable rider, really aggressive rider, very strong rider. But he likes to fiddle with his clothing. He's constantly adjusting his clothing, doesn't feel comfortable, just changes it. Whereas Marcellusi, as he often does, even in quite cold conditions, he very seldom wears arm warmers. And there's not much to Marcellusi. He's an incredibly skinny rider, but he's tough as nails as well, and he hasn't got any extra layers on.
Pascal Ackermann. He has some hopes on today. Yesterday, you know, a little bit reading in between the lines. Yesterday was very strong in the climb. He managed himself to be right at the front of what was remaining of the peloton. So I think he must be feeling good. I hope he can find good legs, you know, on today's sprint. He was in the top 10 in the first day in Sofia. And why not coming back on all glory, winning again this fourth stage of the Giro d'Italia. As you see here, a couple of results, not too bad for him.
He's a very likeable man, the German, Pascal Ackermann. Got a very sunny disposition, always with a smile playing across his features, riding for Jaco Alula. 7 years have passed since his best ever Giro d'Italia, which is in 2019. He took stage 2, he took stage 5, and he took the Maglia Ciclamino. Then 4 years later in 2023, he added a third stage victory, or stage 11. So Pascal Ackermann, a 3-time stage winner at the Giro d'Italia, one of the most successful sprinters in this race, represented in the sprinting peloton. And it is, as we saw, 2 7th places, 2 top 10s for Pascal Ackermann so far in the bunch sprints. A day that can't decide whether it's going to be sunny or rainy or both, forcing Tarozzi to make multiple different clothing choices throughout the afternoon. Helped out on this particular occasion by his teammate Martin Marcellucci, who just keeps it simple by just wearing his normal kit and nothing else.
Brave man.
Trofeo Senza Fine as part of the artwork on their bikes.
Still some umbrellas at the side of the road. Seems like the moment is dry, but he can some part with wet patches might be there. The red is going to be very cautious approaching all the corners here. I can see it seems like it's more wet than it was before.
Speed is beginning to creep up. We're entering the final phase of racing. A little bit more than an hour and a half, but not much more than an hour and a half of racing potentially to go as they head towards the intermediate sprint of the day at Brusciano. Now these 4 riders off the front will sweep up the 12, 8, 5 and 3 points in the Maglia Ciclamino competition, and there's probably be a battle between Mattia Bais and Manuele Tarozzi for those points. After that, there's 1 point available in the Maglia Ciclamino competition, but I don't think any of the sprinters will try and take that point. It would be an entirely wasted effort just for 1 point. If, however, they find themselves up towards the front, they might nip off the front and just pick it up. But they'll want to do it if they're going to do it with zero energy input,
yeah,
or expenditure.
It's going to be very hard to see somebody go after 1 mere point, but maybe also a chance to stretch a little bit the legs for some of the riders. As we said, that's the danger of today also, because it's not really heavily raining, so the roads are the worst possible condition for this, because when you have an enduring rain, then it cleans up a little bit the dirt from the road, but not in this case, as we saw before with Nico Dent crashing out in there, and as well as Nelson Oliveira. Nonetheless, the riders approaching this with a lot of caution. 30 seconds only for this 4-man breakaway. Remember the duo from Bardiani, Marcellucci, Tarozzi, Bais for Poti Visit Malta, and Bergalito from Alpecin Premier Tech.
And the peloton have shown respect, I think, to the various different breakaways that we've had today. When we had the Edward Plankert and Luca Zagalito first break, they respected it, kept it to around about a minute, and ever since initially the 5 riders got together as well, they've just not allowed the break to have any real gap at any point. And that's in marked contrast to this Napoli stage we keep talking about, the Mads Pedersen stage from 3 years ago, when they did build up a big lead, and the peloton found it hard to bring them back, and that's the difference. So perhaps with those kind of races in mind, the peloton is making absolutely no mistake of it at this time and just holding them there at 30 seconds.
Yeah, and they do remember as well what happened in Sofia, where, you know, they almost got short in catching the breakaway that was featuring the aforementioned Tarozzi. He was in the company of Sevilla and Tonelli. they nearly got the best of the peloton, so today they don't want to stand any risks. As Gebresh Gabi rejoined at the front. There's no need, but nonetheless, it's, as we often said, it's also a psychological thing for Milan or the riders that lead the team, to see one of your teammates at the front, you know, working for you, can push you to do a little bit more, a little bit extra. And that's what the presence of the Eritrean rider is more about, rather than controlling, because as you see, the gap is so narrow that there is no real need for him to ride and to be in company of De Vries and Bastians.
Look at that, the famously hard 1914 Giro d'Italia. Stage from Bari to L'Aquila, stage 6, started at midnight and then finished with the last rider crossing in 12th place at 11:45 at night. Yeah. Well, we've got a stage of a possibly similar length tomorrow. It's an enormously long stage tomorrow, but nothing like what the stages were. Half the distance, actually, of the origins of road racing. But by modern standards, a very long stage tomorrow, 244 kilometres. It's quite interesting, actually, the history of the Tour de France in particular, Jacopo. Again, much like the Giro d'Italia, either side of the First World War, most of the stages were at least 350, often I think one of the stages of the Tour de France was 486 kilometres every single year. But Henri Desgranges, who's the race director of the Tour de France, in 1925, he took the big decision to have more than 15 stages for the first time and to halve the distance. So some of the stages were like equivalent to a modern stage. They were 220 kilometres, and he was completely criticised by the French press. They took him to task. There was outrage about, you've messed up the race. It's just une course de petites dames, a race for little ladies with sort of like casual sexism as well.
Feminism was not
a
thing.
Yeah, feminism wasn't a thing then, but yeah, there was outrage that he'd ruined the race.
I mean, even now when there are discussions to change the format of racing, it's always the same story. I think, like, it's the irony of history, you know, it repeats itself in a way that every time you try to change something, there might be somebody who's attacking you and accusing you of being, you know, a disgrace for the sport or for the matter you're trying to change. So always been like this, will always be like this.
Trouble for one of the other Bardiani riders. Flat tyre. It's Filippo Tocconi. Tocconi. Very flat rear wheel. And in these conditions as well, on these slightly wet roads, you want to get that sorted instantly. Can't really ride on with a tyre that flat with damp roads as well. That's an invitation to disaster.
To be seen what he's looking for at the moment. Probably was not informed the team behind, I guess, because it's taking so long to come to him.
Well, the Bardiani car is obviously right at the back of the convoy at the moment. This is a long wait, isn't it? Member of the public there, treated to a close-up view of Tocconi as he waits for his team car. Still waiting to see that car. He's got time to put that bike on eBay, make a sale, and
prepare the package.
Yeah, exactly. Finally gets a wheel change.
Probably was in distress driving the bike, because usually what the rider does, if he's not, you know, overly stressed moment, they call the car and wait for it to replace it at the back of the peloton before stopping and change the wheel. Oh well, it took his time to do so. Even the second team cars passing him.
Still in the convoy though, just about, of cars. There's the second car of the net company Ineos team. So, oh dear, look what lies ahead of them as they head inland and in a northerly direction. It looks like they're heading back into the rain. Tarozzi has spotted that, and I wonder if he's after a rain jacket again from the team car. Little word there with Martin Marcellucci, his teammate. About 14 kilometres to go now until the day's intermediate sprint. I think a really big ambition of Tarozzi's today would be to get to the Red Bull kilometre and score maximum points there. He'd definitely want to do that.
You can guarantee him another step up in the classification of the Red Bull kilometre.
Yep, plus 2,500 euros potentially. And he's also got a teammate in there, so potentially they could finish first and second on the stage, which would be a decent amount of money. Yeah, the Red Bull kilometre overall standings are being led at the moment by Manuele Tarozzi. He's on 30 points, having taken 2 of them so far. And the next best rider is Diego Sevilla on 16 points.
We're checking, as we're talking, we're checking a little bit the forecast of the rain. But it seems like it's getting in the right direction, as what it looks like on the paper.
Should be dry.
Our nose up in the air looks at the clouds as they're moving past us and into inland. But let's hope it's going to be dry for the riders, and we're going to witness a fair and square sprint among the best.
Well, that was the forecast, that it was due to start clearing up in the late afternoon. Let's hope that's the case, even though those rain clouds hanging over the hills inland do look a bit threatening. The wind is blowing those clouds inland and hopefully away from Napoli and away from the coast and away from the finish line. The publicity caravan, as ever, has just arrived at the finish line, around about an hour and a bit ahead of the race. And the dancing troops are entertaining the big crowds here in Napoli. The difference here, finishing in a big city like Napoli, is normally at a Giro finish, like for example in Potenza yesterday, the crowd was very much cycling fans who've travelled, maybe live close by, and the local population. Here in Napoli, the race has sucked in all the many, many thousands of tourists as well who are in the city. So it's got that slightly more international feel to it here, the crowd.
Yeah, that's Napoli really raising, you know, and it's as a prestigious destination for holidaying in recent years. Yesterday I was running around the city, and a lot of tourists, a lot of English-speaking person. Today we had a cafe, me and Ned, and I was the only Italian, I guess, in the most famous bar of Naples here in Piazza Plebiscito.
Yep.
And
it was very, very good. And you paid, for which I thank you. I didn't even dare ask how much it was. I suspect it probably wasn't cheap.
But that's also in a way the beauty of Naples. I can tell you. Then I paid for me and David, our beloved David, the lunch, and it was the same price as our cafe and and little pastry. It's a quite cheap city in a sense, Napoli, just not the bar we were. But I mean, the location it has here in the Piazza Plebiscito is something unique, and
yeah,
I mean, you have to pay for that as well.
Camera picking out Casper van Oorden, the sprinter of Picnic Postanel Racing. Hasn't really got close to the finishing line yet. Stage winner, breakthrough stage win at the Giro d'Italia early on in the first week of the race last year, Casper van Oorden, but wasn't able to follow up and repeat it.
No, he found his way back on, celebrating, winning a race only this year at the Tour of Turkey, and in his previous victory before that was indeed the stage of the Giro d'Italia. So a long streak without a victory for the young, still very young Dutch rider. And let's see if he can get it right. The team is not enduring a very successful season so far. The first victory came exactly thanks to Van Oorden in Tour of Turkey. Otherwise than that, they were not experiencing the best season so far.
Litter zone, where the riders are allowed to jettison the wrappers from their gels, etc., that we picked up and disposed of safely. And a bidon just rolling across the road rather dangerously as well. Jonas Vingegaard glancing up at the sky.
Doing exactly as we're doing here. Checking on the sky. How does it look?
Sun out on the race again. Nico Dents at the back of the peloton, where he will remain today. It's a good job that Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe don't really have a sprinter to look after in this race. They're a fully GC focused team, and Nico Dent won't have a job to do in the lead out for a sprinter, which he sometimes has to do when he's at a race with their sprinters. He's an important part of the lead out train, but it's a good job that he's not going to have to do a job like that today if he's feeling a bit groggy.
I think like the team saw what happened to him, would have said anyway to take it easy and just surfing through the day and just checking on him later on in the stage, because he hit the head very hard. I mean, we thought like he might have a concussion because it looked like it was, as you pointed out correctly, knocked out on that particular moment, and but eventually he restarted and he was able to rejoin the peloton. And I think he's going to be at the back of the peloton. It's going to be just not involved in anything, in any bagarre, in any stressful events in the peloton. It's going to just stay there, surviving the day, and just taking this home, this stage home, and not doing anything.
I think that might be Tocconi who's managed to get himself back on, the young Italian rider who punctured.
Took him some time.
Yeah, it did. Well, he was a long time waiting on the pavement for that spare wheel, wasn't he? As we switch our attention to Eiko Bastians. He's got properly bashed up, isn't he, Bastians? He's got a lot of bandaging on that left leg, and he's got that cut on his left side of his face.
Maybe crashed yesterday. I mean, of course, like when the groups are so spread apart in mountain stage, you have cameras just at the front, and maybe crash in one of those tricky corners, to say the least, where they saw yesterday also Eulalia and Arieta coming down. So at first I didn't saw the bandages on the legs. I thought like there was some bruise or cut on the face, but no, probably he went down.
Yeah.
There were dangerous roads yesterday actually, because the wet that was hitting the race. They were pretty much slippery the whole day long.
Rather overcast scene here in the shadow of these big mountains. The peloton just passing through another waypoint on their way now slowly but surely to the intermediate sprint of the day. 2/3 of the way through the race when they get there or thereabouts, but very much entering the final phase of racing. The average speed of the first hour of racing was 39 kilometers an hour, 39.9. It's gone up, and it's going to get faster from here on in.
Yeah, it's going to be a ferocious ride into Napoli. You know, and on such day when nothing really happened and the speed itself was not overly high, it's going to feature a lot of riders stressed and a lot of energy also to be used in the approach of the finale. So we could fairly expect a lot of fight. The ride into Naples is not too demanding, not too difficult to. It's very clean and straightforward. A lot of big boulevard. They even hit the highway with it this very morning coming here. Just at the last 5 kilometers gets a little bit into the city. There is an quite tight chicane at 4 kilometers, but from there on till 600 meters pretty much on the same road without really turning, just following the coastline. So gentle left, gentle right, and it's gonna take the riders to the finish line, and that's where it gets complicated, but we're gonna explain a little bit more later on of the finale.
Your chance to vote for the most combative rider, the Fighting Spirit prize of the day. Tricky one so far today. I'm sure we'll have some good candidates later, because there might well be one or two riders who try and launch a long attack from teams that don't have a sprinter. But I suppose it would have to go to one. Well, it's up to you. Scan the. I'm not going to tell you what to vote for. Scan the QR code and make your own mind up. Although it should be Edward Plankett.
No.
No?
No, it should be Vergalito, because he
remained longer. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
We are very simple and rational people, me and you. We just go, the riders spend the most of the time at the front.
That's true. Time coming down again to just 26 seconds. They're just toying with this breakaway. You can actually see the breakaway just going out of the shot at the top of the at the top of your picture, and they're really not far behind them. Arthos de Vries looking up, seeing where they are, just knocking it off just a little bit, holding them at 26, 27 seconds. It's a degree of cruelty about what they're doing to the brake, just keeping them off the front, dangling there. But a relatively straightforward day for the new Maglia Rosa. Eulalia, who's enjoyed his time much more than Giulio Ciccone enjoyed his day in pink yesterday.
I think Ciccone yesterday was able to show his Maglia Rosa just at the start line, because the day was horrible to ride on, as torrential rain the whole day long, and was seen with rain jacket the whole day. But Eulalia, he had all the chance to wearing it. A lot of patches also. He had a nasty crash yesterday. When he went down, it was really fast. Could have been much more severe consequences.
Absolutely. Here at the finish line, the publicity caravan having arrived. The patient spectators have been here for a couple of hours now, being rewarded by receiving a few goodies, little bits and pieces that are being thrown their way as well, and they look absolutely delighted to receive them. Caps, little big pointy fingers, bags. Always, it never ceases to amaze me how excited people get about receiving stuff from the publicity caravan. Don't know if I told you, Jacopo, but ASO, who run the Tour de France, once relatively recently did some market research about asking people at the side of the road during the Tour de France why they were there. And more than 50% of the people said that they were there for the publicity caravan. And a minority said that they were there for the race.
Fair enough.
It works.
I mean, that's the beauty of cycling. It's the only sport that comes right at your door, you know, and it's just more than just a bike race. It's just an event, you know.
Yes.
And even this does the job, does the thing, and you never know about these 50% people out there just for the free gift. Maybe next year they're gonna go there just because they like the event itself, you know.
That's true. And I think most of those people might stay as well for the actual race to pass by. I don't think they just go to the publicity caravan and then go home.
No.
Although I bet there are some people who do that.
If it's right next to your door, it might happen, I guess. But if you did travel there, no. Also by the fact that you won't be able to ride your car anymore from there.
That's true. Closed roads. Getting ever more built up now. San Vitaliano in the province of Napoli. 4 tiny little dots there from the helicopter shot. We can see them all lined up, one on the wheel of the other rider. Well, there we go. The legend of Bishop Vitaliano of Capua, recovering from illness in a drought-stricken area, reassured the local peasants that rain would soon arrive. The next day the rain fell, ending the drought. Well, with respect to the Bishop Vitaliano of Capua, we could do without him prophesying any kind of rain on the Giro d'Italia. They've had far too much of it over the last couple of days.
In fact, it's opposite.
Keep his thoughts to himself.
I think that happened in May, indeed, for Vitaliano.
Vesuvius looking incredibly impressive, though, on the horizon. .7 to go until the intermediate sprint. Should see a bit of action here. What do you think? Don't always get it, but I mean, you know, they've got realistically 0% chance of making it to the finish line, these 4 riders, so they might as well.
It's 0. We're so pessimistic. I think they stand a chance.
You think they stand a chance of winning the stage?
1 out of 1,000, but still, there's something. I want to believe. This is going to go more the intermediate sprint rather than the points for the Ciclamino jersey, as this man in here is well above anybody else. It's going to be more important for the riders in order to the intermediate classification, which is a completely different classification.
At the finish line, you get 50 points for a victory, 35 for second place. That's a 15-point difference, 25 for third place. There are 15 scoring places at the finish line. 20 points for fourth place. There's a 30-point difference if, as we were saying earlier, if Paul Magnier were to win and Milan were to finish off the podium, Magnier would extend his already big lead in the Maglia Ciclamino by a further 30 points, and that might be almost enough.
Yeah, but it's not a battle for two. There's going to be more riders involved, and we said like the lineup of sprinters at the Giro d'Italia is impressive. We had possibly the best and in shape rider till this very Giro, Lund Andersen. Madis Mikkels, the Estonian champion.
He's having a very good race, isn't he?
Very, very good. Ethan Vernon, the rider from NSN team. Kasper Van Uder. Dylan Groenewegen, he was very strong the other day.
Martin Marcellucci just drops to the back, having done a turn on the front of this quartet of riders. Just looks over his left shoulder to see if he can make contact visually with the peloton behind, who've just eased off a little bit as they approach the sprint, and the time gap balloons back out again to 50 seconds. So no chance, I don't think, that these riders are going to be caught before the intermediate sprint, and they'll probably as well go to the Red Bull kilometre with a lead over the peloton as well. Certainly the GC teams will be hoping that they won't be forced to sprint for bonus seconds. They won't really want that. Unless, of course, one GC team does fancy the opportunity and hits the front and rides it down. But I can't see that happening today.
No, I think it's, they're going to try and use this stage, the GC team and the GC leaders also a little bit of a rest after ahead of what lays in front of them for tomorrow. At least this is what we think. And it's a mighty stage tomorrow, 244 kilometers. So I think they're more than happy to have kind of a day off for them.
Manuele Tarozzi moving up on the right-hand side of the bunch, just repositioning himself up towards the front as they roll over these big volcanic flagstones. Crowd deep and noisy either side of them. Tarozzi's just pushing on a little bit here. Little gap opens up that needs to be shut down by Luca Vergolito. Martin Marcellucci just bouncing around. He's only a slight, slender, small rider, Marcellucci. Almost Paris-Roubaix style. These bikes are bouncing around on these big volcanic cobblestones. Oh, nasty bit of wet road there that they take onto the next section of cobblestone as well. It's not without its dangers, these sections, are they?
No, because, you know, the moment they're wet, they get very, very slippery. And as you see, some puddle around on the side, especially of the road, and it might get a little bit more technical than they wish. Marigliano. But the sprint, the intermediate sprint is going to be in 2 kilometer time in Brusciano.
What have we got here? Another supporter there. Well, you can't call him a supporter, just someone trying to make a name for himself in all the wrong ways, just stepping out unnecessarily into the road. And we saw that yesterday. It was in everything that happened to Igor Arrieta. Come on. Taunting the peloton almost.
What an idiot.
That's
stupid.
I mean, well, that's beyond stupid. It's malevolent, isn't it? I mean, often you see spectators behaving stupidly. That was just nasty and extremely dangerous. Igor Arrieta, and everything that happened to him yesterday, you almost forget that he nearly collided with a spectator as well when he'd attacked off the front. The guy who turned his back on the race and was waving at the camera stepped out in front of him. Igor Arrieta did very well not to collide with him as well. So he had 2 wheel slips, he crashed, he went the wrong way, and he nearly collided into a spectator as well. There are 5 different things that happened to him. And he won the stage. Yeah.
It's definitely not a rider who believes in destiny, because everything seemed against him yesterday. 1 kilometer for the intermediate sprint. You see from the banner, also marks the 50 kilometer to the finish.
So 1K to go, a little bit less to the intermediate sprint. Watch out for Tarozzi on the wheel of Mattia Bailly-Space. Just looking around to see if you can see what's happening behind him. And a little check from Tarozzi would imply that he's interested in getting to this line in first place. Vergolito, I don't think, is going to Well, you never know, but I don't think he's going to try and take the sprints. Although he's sitting on the wheel of Tarozzi, implying, but he's on the hoods. He hasn't, doesn't look like he's preparing for a sprint. Maybe they'll just roll through. 500 meters to go. Tarozzi doing the work on the front, hoping that no one will challenge him and that everybody in this group knows that he's got the most to gain here, just to extend his position in the intermediate sprints classification, that he leads over Diego Sevilla, so he wants to add a further 18 points.
Yeah, and Bais
12 points, I should say.
If Bais is giving me a little bit indication he's about to kick off and launch a sprint, trying to sneak away points from Tarozzi.
Marcellucci will play his part in trying to foil the plan of Mattia Bais. Tarozzi on the front though, and Bais comes around in. Oof, tight that. I think Marcellucci maybe got there first. We'll wait for confirmation. And on they go again. 37 seconds the lead. So a very minor skirmish for that intermediate sprints classification. The next point of interest is 25 kilometers up the road, and that's the Red Bull kilometer. Aiko Bastions then heads the peloton with all the GC favourites and all the sprinters here. The Belgian brings them towards the intermediate sprint of the day, just over 30 seconds after the breakaway has gone through it. So that's the sprint done with at the Brusciano. 169 starters today in the peloton, just one non-starter as the race got underway at Paestum, and that was Felix Engelhardt, the German. But hasn't been a totally straightforward day to this point. The weather's been a little bit unreliable, and we've seen a few riders crashing. Now let's have a look at who came where in this sprint. Tarozzi was definitely beaten. Maestri, oh no, it was Tarozzi. So having said Marcellucci just pulled on the brakes and allowed Tarozzi to get those maximum 12 points. Maestri finishing in second place. So Marcellucci actually read that to perfection. It looked from the head-on camera like Marcellucci actually took that sprint, but Tarozzi took it. 12 further points then to Manuele Tarozzi. Might realistically be giving up any ambitions for the King of the Mountains competition. The two competitions, there's three competitions actually that he's featuring in at the moment: the intermediate sprints classification, the overall La Fuga breakaway prize, and the Red Bull kilometer classification. Tarozzi is either in first or second place of all of those three separate classifications. Peloton just easing up with Bastions in control from Soudal Quickstep, and the time gap is around about 46 seconds. There's no need to catch them now. In fact, there's a genuine incentive not to catch them now, because the chaos of the Red Bull kilometer coming into play is something that neither the sprinters teams nor the GC teams would want at the moment. So there's a strong possibility the next 23 kilometers or so, not much will change, barring accident, that we'll just see this time gap bouncing around between around about 30 seconds and 45 seconds or thereabouts. After the Red Bull kilometer, I think that's when we'll see potentially the breakaway being swept up.
It will make no sense for the peloton to risk, you know, a little bit of chaos in the race just because they want to close the gap on those guys already now, but it seems like they want to slow down. They're playing a little bit also. You know, if I would be one of the riders in the breakaway, I will slow down a lot, you know, using this as kind of an excuse to save the legs and you know, just waiting the Red Bull kilometer to really open up and try, you know, to stay clear ahead of the peloton in the last 25 kilometers.
Manuele Tarozzi moves up to fourth place in the Maglia Ciclamino standings, but he leads, more significantly and more pertinently, he leads the intermediate sprints classification. But look at that, it's not pretty impressive. He's in fourth place in the Maglia Ciclamino. And as the quartet of riders at the front do slow right up, the message hasn't really got through to De Vries, who's just continuing to roll to ride at the same tempo, and the time gap comes thundering down to 18 seconds. A little exchange there between Grabek-Shabir and De Vries.
Yeah, I think they've been talking one each other to don't get too close, as we see now. Heiko Bastian's coming also at the front to talk with the Grabek-Shabir and trying to slow down, because they don't have and they don't want at all catch the breakaway now.
Well, you know, if they bring this gap down to 10 seconds or something, you could get a rider like Jan Christen do something mad and just nip off the front to try and take 6 bonus seconds.
Like you, just projecting in that. I know. I think in my thinking as well, probably it's the team who's stopping him to do so. But that's what we were saying, like if the breakaway is playing a little bit with cat and mouse, you know, in a way, just staying up front with a little margin, you know, they can take it easy and they can manage to save a lot of energy for what comes later on. Why not? I mean, then they know they have to do a team time trial of 25 kilometers. But again, it's 25 kilometers. They might have a chance later on. That's why it's 1 out of 1,000 and maybe more than 1,000. Well, why not? You have to try. You're there. You're sitting in the front. You're sitting in a breakaway. It's the Giro. Why stop believing?
"21 stages of racing in a Grand Tour, and at least half of those you have a breakaway where they have some sort of a chance. And in any Grand Tour, you'll always have 3 or 4 days of racing where the breakaway does something exceptional. And you never quite know when it's going to strike, but this race situation, just on the face of it, if you look at it, looks absolutely impossible, doesn't it? An hour of racing still to go, 20 seconds the advantage.
45 kilometer, they're under the mark of counting down the kilometers for the breakaway and the peloton in 20 seconds. It's gonna, under the same arch, it's gonna possibly appear at the back of the... It's a call for other riders to attack, though, eh? Like they just behind it, they see that they imagine like a Lotto, Intermarché. What they got to do today? Nothing. They have no sprinter, nobody's fast from their team, or...
So now you're projecting.
Yeah, totally, totally.
But you're not the only one. It's part of the duties of being a spectator, isn't it? Go on, try something. You're willing the riders to... But it's easier said than done. This is the Giro d'Italia. This is a brutal 3-week stage race. They've got a horribly long day tomorrow. They had a horribly long wet day yesterday. Of course they're not going to attack. Most of these riders will be completely happy with the race situation at the moment, Jacopo. But you, having been a lead-out man all your racing career pretty much as a pro, at what point in the race, now we're 45 kilometres, less than 45 kilometres from the finish line, do you really start to organise your sprint train and actually position yourself in the peloton with the sprint in mind? Does it begin now?
I think like... depend on the stage, obviously, depend on the type of parkour you're gonna see, but ideally when we've seen over the years like a shift, also like an anticipation of the moment the teams are hitting the front. But in terms of general, I think like the last 50 kilometer, last 60 kilometer, despite you're not exactly doing like some sort of a job, it's just staying together, you know. It's also a moment like, especially the like today, you know, some riders, they're talking one each other. It's a quite relaxing day. I would say like rather around 60 kilometers to go, you just gather together with your teammates, and it's just rather than do some actual work in the front of the peloton or in the middle of the peloton, it's just to get your mind right, you know, just to get focused, just to dive in a little bit into what's come next, you know. You prepare yourself and especially your brain, you know, to what will come later on in the race. And it's also a moment when you're there, like where the kind of the road captain of the lead out is gonna, you know, give an extra indication what they were, you know, doing in the briefing before the stage, you know, like that was my role when I was a rider. So getting there, you know, you got all your teammates around you, you're gonna remember, you know, kind of recalling how the finale is going to be, how it's going to unfold, how you want it to unfold, and that's the best moment, because it's not yet stressful. It's still quite a quite relaxed moment, and can give you the chance, you know, to live in your mind and the mind of your colleagues once more what's the plan that you want to put in place later on in the stage.
It's Jonathan Narvaez. Might see him, as Jacopo was saying, might see him just have a little bit of a nudge to see if he can get a top 10 or better. Maybe even threaten the podium, Jonathan Narvaez, on a finish that suits him, and he's clearly on great form. He's going very well, Jonathan Narvaez, despite the crash on stage 2 that he managed to survive and that cost the race participation of 3 of his teammates. Doesn't seem affected by it at all, and Narvaez has come to the Giro once again in great form. A rider who crashed badly in January and has only just started racing again at the Giro, having suffered a fall at the Tour Down Under.
Yeah, I mean, since he joined the U18, he didn't contest anymore in a sprint. It's not a rider usually wins bunch sprint, but he was there, you know, like kind of surfing in between the peloton. He's a very skilled rider for positioning himself, you know, very smart way of racing from him. And today's is very straightforward before the last 600 meter, but then he's gonna get, you know, on the cobbles. He's not gonna be overly fast, and I think he has a fair chance to do something good in a stage like today. And I would be more than happy to see Jonathan Narvaez, you know, mingling a little bit with the other sprinters in such a finish line.
See the white jersey of Igor Arrieta bearing the red Dossard number as well. Voted the most combative rider yesterday. I think that's a pretty safe call as well. Igor Arrieta is most outstanding candidate for the most aggressive rider yesterday, but we had lots of aggressive racing yesterday indeed. Victor Campenaerts on a normal day might have won that prize for his contribution. Darren Rafferty could have won it as well, the way he chased back on. But in the end, the race came down to those 2 extraordinary solo performances from Eulalia, the new Maglia Rosa, and yesterday's stage winner Igor Arrieta, who also moves up into 2nd place in this newly formed general classification as we enter the middle of the Giro. After today, we will be very nearly 1/3 of the way through, or we will be after tomorrow's stage. In fact, 7 stages in of 21.
Yeah, I'm coming back on the red Dossard, on the most combative rider. I mean, I think like the drama that Arrieta provided us, I think that sparked a little bit of, I don't know, a lot of people voting for him, and I do understand that because it was quite something, quite remarkable, the way he rode yesterday, the way he won yesterday, and also all in between that happened for him and Eulalia as well. So I think it was well earned as well. It was well earned, the victory of yesterday's stage.
Eulalia in holding his position there in the peloton in 4th place. Let's see a cluster of Bahrain victorious riders around him. He's got 5 teammates on his wheel, a teammate in front of him as well, Paskens. Look how close that bunch is. Harthuis de Vries of Unibet Rose Rockets holding the peloton at, well, it says there 17 seconds. It might even be a little bit less than that. Certainly, they're only, by the looks of it, around about 150, 200 meters ahead of them, the quartet of riders. And Marcellucci looks round to see just how close they are.
Yeah, I mean, if you launch an attack from the peloton right now, I mean, you can find yourself in the breakaway. No, that's what we said. If you get too close to this 4-man breakaway, you can, you know, spark a reaction from riders, because now 2 teams in particular, like one is Alpecin Premier Tech Express at the front, but also Lotto Intermarché, they lost their main sprinter, and they, in a stage like today, they might as well say, okay, why not? Why not try? What I have to lose? And then it can become really difficult to control. Doesn't mean that if they catch a breakaway from now on, it's going to be 40 kilometers of attacking, because eventually it will settle. You know, if a team shows commitment at the front to control the situation, it will settle anyway. But yeah, you don't want to endure this type of chaos, and the Red Bull kilometer is still to be done, so watch out for that.
Well, these images from the finish line of the Giro A, the e-bike competition that took place a little bit earlier as the riders finish in team formation. The slow motion images showed you there once again just how rough these big cobblestones are, these flagstones, these volcanic flagstones on this finish line. And you can also see how the last 150 meters of the finish line, it flattens out. It's not totally flat, but prior to that, from about 400s to 150, meters. It is really quite steep, the finish line. So a very hard technical finish. Mercifully, it's going to be dry. I think we can say that now. Looking out to see where the weather is coming from, I don't think that we can see any cause for concern. We're going to have a dry finish, which is great. But look at that gap from that perspective, from the helicopter shot, which is albeit slightly foreshortened. These are the same television pictures that the directors of Lotto Intermarché will be seeing in their team cars. And if they were following Jacopo Guarnieri's advice, they would be telling their riders now that the chance is there just to get across, but you can't see any red jerseys from Lotto Intermarché anywhere near the front.
And it will not be impossible, because he always puts some creative attacks. And Leonard van Etveld with some of his teammates later on in the Red Bull kilometer.
Well, yes, we're 15 kilometers from that Red Bull kilometer.
He's going to go for the peloton at this point. It's very hard to believe the breakaway will still be outside of and not part of just a larger bunch in there. As also Groupama FDJ United appeared in there.
Yeah, well, they've got Paul Penwet, who's a fast finisher, haven't they? But they could maybe try something a little bit more. They haven't really had an impact in this race just yet. You can see how there's a slight diagonal look to this peloton as well, as the this bit of sweeping, open, big highway road is it's just being blown by a slight crosswind there, which means that Egan Bernal, for example, and the Net Company Ineos team are moving a little bit closer to the front of the bunch, and that in itself is just taking time back on this breakaway. They're being held so close now.
It's going to be also curious. I mean, maybe here I'm going overly into the fantasy world, but I would be happy to see, in a way, people gonna try something, not waiting for the sprint. You know, he's a fast finisher himself. In such a finish, you know, if he enters the cobbles, even at the front of the peloton, but with, I would guess, like an Narvaez or another team on his wheel that let a little gap in front of him, he could as well take it till the line. And I think he might try. I mean, why not?
Depends whether or not Ben Turner really fancies his chances, I guess.
He spent a lot of energy in the last couple of stages, Ben Turner.
But he's also, yeah, he has, but he's also on great form, isn't he?
Yeah,
and this is, in theory, a finish that suits him as well, so maybe Ganna will be working for him today. But you're right, Filippo Ganna in the past has tried moves like that, hasn't he? Remember there was a stage that finished in Liguria a couple of years ago that was won by Jonathan Milan, and that came down to a bunch sprint, but only after Filippo Ganna had been caught in the last couple of kilometres. There was a little rise in the road that he used as a launch pad to attack.
10 seconds, as this image talks even more than the numbers. They're getting there.
There we go,
close.
There's a signpost. Just turn, if you just turn to the right, you go straight to Rome. However, the peloton of the Giro d'Italia is a little bit more complicated, isn't it? They've got 2,478 kilometres to get to Rome. But
they take the way of saying every road leads to Rome in every sense possible, because they go all over the roads of Italy before heading there.
Well, Jacopo, it looks like they're going to be caught, and the Red Bull kilometre seconds are going to come into play whether they like it or not.
And this for, I mean, it's going to be interesting.
I mean, it's surprising, isn't it, that they've done this, that they've allowed this to happen. But that's it. Those four riders are going to be swept up, and it's going to be the sprinters teams who've done it as well, inviting chaos, or a little bit of chaos, into the race. I'm not entirely sure why they've done that, but maybe it was these four riders who forced them to actually be caught, because they slowed down so much they couldn't. The sprinters teams couldn't actually follow that tactic. You
know, for the sprinters team, they don't care much, because they're rather experienced and having a hard time controlling a little bit of chaos during the Red Bull kilometer, rather than, you know, risking of losing the chance of sprinting. Because if those guys, they go too close to the finish line without spending too much energy, imagine after the Red Bull kilometer, you know, it's going to be very hard to catch them. So they did this choice, and yeah.
Well, that's the end of the breakaway for Manuele Tarozzi, and it's been a useful expedition for him. He's added more kilometres to his overall breakaway standings. Mattia Bais played his part as well and took the only categorised climb of the day. Tarozzi took the sprint, though, to extend his lead in the intermediate sprints classification. And it's the first time that we've seen Luca Vergalito Vergalito, thank you. I knew I'd get that wrong. That's my new Gebregsha beer.
I'm getting better.
Vergalito. That's the first time we've seen Luca Vergalito of Alpecin Premier Tech up the road, albeit in the company initially of his teammate Edward Plankett. As they come off that big highway and onto a slip road, and then bit by bit they're going to turn from a westerly direction with a big horseshoe loop through the district of Civano, and then head south and into the wind, which will come over their right shoulders. It'll be a cross headwind towards the Red Bull kilometre. And the Red Bull kilometres are at 23.8 kilometres to go, and the peloton is all together again. So 6 seconds available for first place, 4 and 2. And
as much that even if you go even further down, you know how big impact this second's going to have on the general classification. You know, the sprinter teams, they must be, you know, in close touch with the guys they're going to go for the Red Bull kilometer, because you never know if you have 4 or 5 GC guys up there and they decided to give it a go after the Red Bull kilometer because they see there is a gap. You know, the distance is not too big, you know, they might as well try, as we often see also in the past, you know, after an intermediate sprint, seeing a group of riders moving clear. We saw, I clearly remember one year with Peter Sagan, he went on the attack with Geraint Thomas, and he was in a Tour de France, you know, after an intermediate sprint. So they need to be very careful, the sprinting teams, and once the acceleration by the GC team going to be put in place, they need to be very much up there immediately.
Yesterday's hero, Igor Arietta. And back-to-back stage wins for UAE Team Emirates. First time that's happened for that team at the Giro d'Italia since the Pogacar edition of the race back in 2 years ago, when Pogacar took stages 15 and 16. The pace is getting ever higher now. It is rapid as they approach the business end of today's stage, the real finale. 35 kilometres to go, just over 10 kilometres to the Red Bull kilometre, and then after that they will be flying towards the finish line in Napoli.
Sun is shining on the peloton and near the finish. It's going to be ideal situation for the tarmac and the cobbles. Nico Dens, this is going to be his position the whole day after sustaining a very nasty crash in a corner, wet corner, earlier on today.
UAE's Igor Arietta turning domestique for the day and making sure that Antonio Morgado is supplied with gels for the final. Gone back to the team car to get them. The rider in second place in the general classification and in second place in the white jersey competition. Still the same 3 riders are doing the work and sharing the work and working as a team. Gebregsha very much the senior rider here. Damiano Caruso comes up to have a little word with Eiko Bastens. What would that be about, Jacopo, do you think?
I don't know. I think Caruso is funny guy, funny rider. I think he was kind of looking at them. What have you done?
What are you chasing? They have slowed up a little bit. You can see they were motoring a little bit under 35 kilometres to go, and that little word from Damiano Caruso, they've just knocked it off pace-wise just a bit. 10 kilometres to go to the Red Bull kilometre. Discussions going on a little bit further back down as well, as Groupama FDJ United have got themselves on block. Filippo Ganna, the aforementioned rider, is at the bottom of your screen in the middle. He's moved a little bit closer to the front.
He's going to maybe have a duty later on for Egan Bernal and Thymen Arensman to be seen if who's going to contest the sprint, because I assume also a lot of faster finisher will be involved, not the pure sprinters, but the likes of Jan Christen. Jonas Vingegaard maybe going to unleash Timo Kilic and Lorenz Rex, Team Rex, sorry, the brother. Lorenz is definitely not present here in racing, also for the likes of Soudal Quick-Step. But the teams are gathering at the front because they know that what's coming next.
Juan Pedro Lopez scampering to join up with his Movistar team and just squeeze round that central reservation. The left-hand side of the road, clearly the right side to take, as some riders opt to bunny hop over that central reservation. Everybody round the roundabout, hopefully safely. Nothing to chase now, nothing up the road ahead of them. Just a question of controlling things. You can see one rider from Lotto Intermarché moving up on the right just to get himself a little bit closer to the front as we look at the finishing location. For the 6th consecutive year, the Giro d'Italia comes to this mighty setting, finishing right outside this church as well. In the heart of Napoli, this beautiful city. Feed zone at the side of the roads. Not many bottles being picked up by these riders. It's not hot today. The pace hasn't been murderously high, so they won't all be gasping. A few rain jackets being dropped off as we dismiss the prospect, thankfully, of any further rain. And riders try to lighten the load for this fast and furious finale.
We're getting closer to the Red Bull kilometer. It's going to be coming soon, and didn't happen in the recent stages that he was up for grabs for GC contenders, but today it's the case. Although I think some of them are going to try and go out in a hunt of bonuses, but some teams, and I would expect, especially from Visma Lease a Bike here, a recap where we are during the stage. Coming back to Visma Lease a Bike, fairly expect them, instead of having Jonas Vingegaard, which is definitely slower than riders of U18 Emirates such Jan Christen, or even from Giulio Pellittari, they're going to unleash probably Timo Kilic or Tim Rex in order to, get away and taking away those bonuses second from the opponents. See, we have a glimpse of Naples. That's the Vomero, the highest point of the city. Big city side. And has been said already 6th year in a row that Naples is coming. Finish stage for the Giro d'Italia. So we're getting closer to the Red Bull kilometer. Again, maybe some of the teams were hoping that the breakaway would have been still up front, but the pace were definitely not high, neither by them or the peloton, but they were playing a little bit cat and mouse, trying and hoping that nobody from the breakaway was willing to close the gap, but eventually it happened, and that's why we're going to be able to see so much action coming from the peloton. And don't be fooled, because sprinter teams need to be up there, need to be ready to readjust in case some of the other riders are going to try and taking the chance of move clear and stay away, because the Red Bull kilometer itself is very close to the finish line.
Yeah, the entire remaining 30 kilometers of today's stage are urban. They're all within the greater bounds of the sprawling city of Napoli, so that brings with it a particular technicality, doesn't it? It's not the open countryside and the long straight roads. This is quite technical, this run into the finish line, and it remains so all the way to the last few kilometers when they hit the port and the long road by the harbour in Napoli. It does get a bit more straight and straightforward, but to get to that point they have to be sort of wiggling their way through the city.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of turns in city roads, as you clearly see now. Just the last, I would say, when they're going to hit very briefly the highway and exiting at around 6 kilometers, and after that long lines, long straight lines for them, but before that it's going to be a lot of twists and turns. The Red Bull kilometer itself is going to be on a gentle ramp. I don't know if it's ramp is correct, like really like a false flat going uphill, but almost insignificant for the riders. Lead out for Jonathan Milan. This distinctive color of little trek already well placed up front. It might be ready as well for some sprinting now for the Red Bull kilometer. I don't know if Derek G was never involved in previous stages, and whether to be seen if Ciccone feel like he want to give it a go. I mean, he lost yesterday the jersey, but you never know what might happen in the coming stages.
Well, if you take out of the equation the riders who finished it from the breakaway ahead of the GC group yesterday, when you start the GC at Giulio Ciccone in 6th place, he leads Jan Christen by 4 seconds. He leads Florian Stork and Egan Bernal all by 4 seconds. So there's Christen, Stork and Bernal 4 seconds down on Ciccone. Tiemann Ahrensman is 6 seconds down. So too is Giulio Pellizzari. And then everybody else really is at 10 seconds down to Josh Kench of Groupama FTJ.
Yeah, and if tomorrow a breakaway will go for the victory, so taking away the bonuses at the finish line, and Ciccone manages to stay with the first point of the climbers of the GC contenders, might be as well back in the leading jersey if Eulalia cracks and all the rest as well. It's not an easy day tomorrow, so it's not I'm going to say obvious that Eulalia is going to be able to stay in touch. Yesterday he spent a lot of energy, and those energy might cost him tomorrow the stage, but still far, still 24 hours before that, and we have to focus what's coming today, and today is going to be a fast and furious day as we enter the municipality, il comune, Cardito. All those, the outskirts, you know, really the outside of Naples center.
Yeah, it's a big plain around the Mount Vesuvius, and it's predominantly flat, and it spreads out across the countryside, the sprawling suburbs of Napoli. That's where we're racing through at the moment. You're right, Lidl Trek have moved up closer to the front of the race now with Jonathan Milan, Max Walscheid, Matteo Sobrero is there, so too is Giulio Ciccone.
Tudor appeared at the back, Arieta as well, probably scoring Jan Christen. And on the left on the screen, so right of the peloton, there was also the net company Ineos.
It's interesting to see Visma Lease Bike opting to do what they did on stage 1 actually back in Bulgaria. They're just content for now at least to keep Jonas Vingegaard out of danger, but towards the back. You can see all those yellow jerseys there. That's where he wants to be for now.
Yeah, I think he must have stopped because I cannot see his red helmet.
No, I can't see him quite there either, but all his team around him.
Yeah, and Campenaerts, by the position of Campenaerts, might be that Vingegaard just have stopped or mechanical.
Yep.
But it was at the back. It's quite not the best day possible to be seated at the back, as you know, the parkour, as you see, a lot of corners, and if you have there is a problem in the peloton, a crash or whatsoever, you might be stuck behind the peloton.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one to watch. Good spot there, Jacopo. Has Victor Campenaerts just dropped off the back because Jonas Vingegaard, who we can't see there, is off the back of the peloton, and will Campenaerts be charged with bringing the leader of Visma Lease Bike back to the peloton. It's just one to keep your eye on at the back. Meanwhile, at the front, though, we're getting very close to the Red Bull kilometre. It's at 23.8 kilometres to go, so just a few kilometres, and then we'll see whether or not any of the GC teams want to try and take these 6 bonus seconds, or whether or not it won't be contested. I don't think it... I can't imagine... I mean, someone's going to give it a go, surely.
Yeah, of course. Like
they have to.
And it's there. It was not a challenging day. You know, everybody's fresh, so why not trying something at this point in order to... You know, to get those seconds, as the mighty Vesuvio appears at the back. You cannot be fooled, that's a volcano.
That is a awesome sight, isn't it? Vesuvius looming large over the urban sprawl of Naples, where we are cutting our way through en route to an absolutely landmark and iconic finish, a new finish for the Giro d'Italia in Naples on the volcanic cobblestones right in the heart of the city. It's going to be spectacular. Still the same trio of riders, though, dictating the pace at the front of this race, keeping the speed high enough to deter any big attacks, just rolling along. Eiko Bijstens, Hartas de Vries, and the rider on his wheel, Amero Gebrekshabir. Those three riders still doing the work on the front. But watch out for a team starting to make a move on the either the left or the right side. Who's going to take this one up? UAE Team Emirates have got Jan Christen and Jonathan Narvaez and Igor Arieta moving up a little bit closer to the front. Remember that Jan Christen is still very much in the general classification hunt at the moment. He is in 7th place, 4 seconds down on Giulia Ciccone's time.
He's a rider is going to be involved in this, in featuring a very good punch. As all the teams appears also. Tarozzi again for Bardiani CSF. Astana may have a good try today with Malucelli, was 5th in the first in the stage of Sofia, the first stage of Burgas. He was involved in the crash, so didn't feature the top 10.
Yeah, Matteo Melicelli, the sprinter from XTS Astana, at 32 years of age, finally making his debut at the Giro d'Italia, a late flourishing rider who over the last year or so has started to produce some very good results indeed. Start making your pick in the Fantagiro, the Fantasy League. Scan the QR code, get involved, make your pick for today's stage finish. Who's going to finish where? Can anyone beat Paul Magnier? It suits him down to the ground, as he confidently expressed before the stage even got underway. This was the stage that Paul Magnier thought suited him the best of all of them, which is really saying something since he's already won 2 stages and has a bit of a stranglehold in the Maglia Ciclamino. Is he going to win a 3rd stage of the Giro d'Italia? That really would be a stunning sequence of success if the young Frenchman is able to do that in this kind of company, in this kind of strength of field. Really would be ramming his points home. But there's a lot of riders, most notably Jonathan Milan of Lidl Trek, who'll be hoping to deny him that as we pass to almost 1 kilometre to go to the Red Bull kilometre.
As we're approaching as well the finish line, 25 kilometers to go. After this kind of a turning point now with the Red Bull kilometer, it's going to be full stress, still the line. It's not going to be a way back. So all the teams going to be gathering at the front in order to keep the best possible position ahead of the arrival in Naples. The whole Polti Visit Malta gathered.
I noticed that.
Distinctive red pants. You're going to be fooled by mix max with other teams.
Well, their motivation wouldn't be about bonus seconds if they're going to launch a sprint here. It would be about the cash prize, the €2,500 prize. But Polti Visit Malta have got themselves organised.
And also Lennart van Etvelt is now a little bit hidden behind Tarozzi.
Oh yeah, the red white helmet and the red jersey. You can see on the right-hand side of the road in 3rd place on the wheel of Alpecin, Premier Tech and Bardiani, who've got the front of the road on the left-hand side of the road, who are starting to lift the pace now. Polti Visit Malta a little bit distributed across the place, looking for their riders. Also Ben O'Connor getting involved.
And Lennart van Etvelt as well.
Yeah,
on
down
the left.
middle. So Ben O'Connor trying to come off the wheel of Diego Sevilla. Polti Visit Malta trying to lead him out. Lennart van Etvelt coming with a real charge, though, down the middle. Has he left it too late? Where's the line? Van Etvelt then. But it's Polti Visit Malta trying to get those bonus seconds, but a lunge for the line by Magli, I think it is, from Bardiani CSF. It's going to be Magli ahead of Polti Visit Malta rider. I think we've got 2nd place. Lennart van Etvelt just looking across to check. Possibly Van Etvelt might have picked up 4 seconds or even 6 for 2nd place, but it was Filippo Magli who took the 1st prize over the Red Bull kilometre.
It was a long sprint from Van Etvelt.
Now, the sprinters teams have to be slightly aware now that there's going to be there's a rider who's attacked. So I think it might be Stuart Bax of the Pinarello Q36.5 team. Oh no, wrong team. It's Bahrain Victorious instead who've launched a rider. And that was always the risk, that a rider might go straight over the top as soon as that sprint subsided. And it's the Belgian ruler, Alex Segat.
And it's a rider you don't want to let go because he's a fine time trial. Has been awarded already with the title of European champion in the time trial as a U23 fine time trialist.
Really interesting selection of riders, though, competing at that Red Bull Sprint, wasn't it? Very unpredictable. And I think that the reason for that is there's two motivations, isn't there? Bonus seconds, but because Red Bull, the sponsors, put up such a big cash prize, it draws in a whole load of other riders as well. So it was a very strange selection of riders.
There was just a couple of GC contenders involved. One was Lennart Van Etvelt and Jensen Plowright as well, and Ben O'Connor.
Ben O'Connor, yeah.
Jensen Plowright is not a GC contender.
Van Etvelt picked up 3rd place there.
Yeah, seems like.
Yep.
Seems like. We're going to get confirmation. But a couple of seconds for the Belgian rider.
Useful seconds as well. Van Etvelt will, if he's picked up 4 seconds, which we believe he has, he now moves to the same time as Timo Arendsman and Giulio Pellizzari. Closes the gap to them and puts 4 points of a difference between him and Enric Maas, Michael Balocchi, Jonas Vingegaard, Jan Hirt, Damiano Caruso, Jai Hindley and the rest of them.
Alex Segert.
The attack, though. Alex Segert has been brought back.
I think he immediately looked back if somebody was willing to come with him. It wasn't the case, and I think he decided it was not worth the try. And here's the moment where they're gonna hit this sort of fastway, highway, how would you call it?
Yep.
And it's gonna be a little bit less turns for some brief moment. Still De Vries, Bastiens and Gebrselassie leading the way. And it's going to be a fast and furious finale because the day itself was very easy. There was no attacks, nothing of note, nothing of some sort. So all the energies of the riders are there, and it's going to be very, very fast indeed. Teams are gathering up again. We can see Groupama, FDG United on the right of the screen when the peloton tend to be bigger, like a bubble. Visma Leasebike, interestingly, still at the back of this peloton, very distinctive yellow colors.
Slight correction to what I said about Van Etvelt. Of course, he only picks up 2 bonus seconds for 3rd, so he's not quite on a par with Arendsman and Pellizzari, but he's clear of Maas and all the other riders.
It was a tight call.
Yep. I was slightly surprised to see Jensen Plowright involved in that sprint as well, because he's got a chance at the finish line. Maybe he was just, as you alluded to earlier, the sprinters like to maybe just open their legs up a bit, feel that a slight change of rhythm, feel how those legs are with the sprint in mind. He's got plenty of time to sit in the wheels again and recover from that effort.
On the left, Decathlon CMA, CGM, already well placed at the front for Tobias Lund Andersen.
Big wide road, as you say, a UAE style finish at the moment, isn't it, on this big highway?
Yeah, later on it's going to be a little bit more narrow, but is this the moment where you want to use, you know, the width of the road to replace yourself and finding a better position as Visma Leasebike continues to stay at the back, at the very far back of the whole peloton.
Worth saying, isn't it, though, that Jonas Vingegaard is back in the peloton, because last time we saw that he was missing, but he is there, Jonas Vingegaard, and opting this time just to stay towards the back. Well, that's okay as a tactic, so long as no splits in the peloton occur at this point. There's no big crash. He needs to get through these next 15 kilometers into the sprint zone, the so-called sprint zone, and through 5k to go when he can be relatively comfortable in terms of any potential GC pitfalls. Bastinsen picking it up a little bit as the road just drops down towards Napoli.
Price Pieters.
Nico Dents as well, just having to shut a gap there. Does look a little bit ill at ease, Nico Dents, having suffered a bad fall.
Already well positioned, maybe a little bit too much at the front. Suda Quick Step, Van der Bosch, a fine track rider. Jasper Stuyven, Paul Manier in Ciclamino, and appears also Raccagni Noviero, and I think that was either Zana or Garofoli.
René Rochas has the Groupama FDJ team on his wheel as well, in the red, white and blue of that famous team. FDJ United, as they're known nowadays. 18.7 kilometres to go. Very, very fast at this point as they drop down on this highway, heading towards the coastline in Napoli.
Yeah, the speed has definitely picked up as we see. It's at the front is battling for position to retain the best possible position as the roads open up briefly, because now again it's going to be back to 2 lanes.
You're right, Soudal Quickstep have hit the front very early, haven't they? They've got the whole team on the front. You can see the Maglia Ciclamino tucked in 7th, 8th place. He's got his 7th place it is. He's got 6 riders in front of him, but they have hit the front very early indeed. Yeah,
still Ico Bastian's doing his job, so they can benefit from sitting on his wheel. But as we said earlier, this moment, you know, when they in this kind of highway that goes around all the neighbors of Naples, can allow them, you know, to experience some high speed. As Ismail bike again at the back, closing down the peloton is Bryce Pieters. Time trialist for Alpecin Premier Tech. Luca Vergallito was earlier on in the breakaway, and Frank van den Broek as well. They got nothing to do today. It's not the stage for them.
There are those yellow jerseys. Just going out of your shot there at the bottom of your screen of Jonas Vingegaard. It's a long, long, long way back from the very front of the race at the moment. Doing that quite deliberately, though, because that's where he wants to be most relaxed. As the Unibet Rose Rockets have to have a bit of a bike change. There's no time for a wheel change right now with the pace as high as it is. And they're going to need this rider back in as soon as possible. It's one of the lead-out riders, Matthias Kopecky, who has dropped back and questionable as to whether or not he can get back on to be of much use to Dylan Groenewegen lead-out train. Yeah,
thanks to him, there is a big road where he can benefit from getting a little bit of slipstream from the cars. So I think in a matter of 2-3 kilometers, he's going to be able to rejoin the peloton.
Needs to be calm, doesn't he? He doesn't want to go too deep, so he's got something back.
You don't have to spend too much energy, because it won't make things easier, and your job is to be there in the finale. So he's going to try to rejoin this man, Dylan Groenewegen.
Yep, Dylan Groenewegen.
Scored with Elmar Reinder and Lukas Kubic.
Last sprint we had in the Bulgarian capital city of Sofia, this man was finishing faster than anyone else. So the legs are good, the form is there, and if they can get the lead out right, and if he can time his effort right on this complicated finish here, Dylan Groenewegen is, well, the form is clearly good enough to get his first ever Giro stage win. Will it happen today? And if it does, that'll be a historic moment for this young, aspirational team, the Unibet Rose Rockets, registered as a French team, but packed with Dutch talent. Can they get over the line in their first ever Grand Tour today? And where are the Lidl Trek team right now? Because they're not visible towards the front. XTS Astana have Matteo Manicelli in 3rd wheel there. You can see Bahrain victorious, looking after the pink jersey. There's the Lidl Trek team on the other side of the road, alongside Soudal Quickstep, still with Gebrek Shabir on the front. So both those big teams, Soudal Quickstep, Milan's team and Magnier's team, have shown themselves at this point in the race right towards the front. But it's not as if one team is setting the pace here and everybody is following them. They are marking one another. The road is wide enough for 6 or 7 teams just to mark each other's wheels and ride at the same tempo.
Yeah, this is not the place and the moment where teams want to go and dig it in all the energy they got, because they're still far from the finish and you don't want to burn too many riders at this very point. It's David Sevilla replacing himself and try to give some help to the teammates as they're featuring Giovanni Lonardi, who had a very good sprint in the first day of Burgas. Fast finisher, the Italian. Ico Bastian's finishing his job. It's now Garofoli at the front. That's why we said that he was quite early for them as Matthias Kopecky.
Yeah, you were bang on right. Look how quickly he's managed to get himself back in after that very efficient wheel change, actually. A bike change, I should say. And he's been piloted back towards the front by Wout Poels, who won't really be involved in the final lead-out to Poels, but he can be of real use now, just to help Kopecky reposition himself up towards the front.
It's going to just help Kopecky to spend as little as possible to rejoin the front of the race. As here is, again, Bahrain retaking the lead. Pinarello leading the way for team NSN.
Bastian's now no longer on the front for Soudal Quickstep. Gebrek Shabir still on the front for Lidl Trek. Tudor Pro Cycling as well, alongside them.
Larry Varbasse American experienced rider for the Swiss outfit.
Tobias Lund Andersen. 1 second place finish for him on stage 1 so far, the highlights. 2 top 10s though in total. And a 9th place in the capital city of Sofia on stage 3, but it was that opening stage where he looked like he might have got it won. He just opened up his sprint a little bit too soon, and Magnier was able to finish the job off, the Maglia Ciclamino, and alongside him, Pascal Ackermann, one of his biggest rivals, to take the victory. Look at the rider with the pink helmet and the light blue jersey as well, the Estonian national champion, Madis Mikkels. His contribution to the sprint so far, he's been flying a little bit under the radar, hasn't been the rider who people have been talking about, but he was started in 5th place, and in Sofia he was in 4th. He's getting better all the time.
Yeah, and in both occasions he showed like he had good legs coming fast from behind, so he's gonna give it a go again today, and his job is going to be mainly surfing, you know, behind other teams, because he cannot feature any helps from his teammate, I think, except from Valgren. It's going to be very hard for the other riders to help him. There's James Shaw right behind him, but it's much more, I would say, like much more like a climbing style, James Shaw. Valgren is a powerful Dane. He might be the guy who can give him a help, a last push, but he knows how to surf between wheels. As they exiting the highway.
Slightly more narrow now, the roads that they're dealing with. Bahrain Victorious, the big GC team with the pink jersey to look after, to shepherd towards that 5 kilometre to go marker where he can relax a little bit. They have the left-hand side of the road. XDS Astana as Polti Visit Malta down the middle with Tudor Pro Cycling, Lidl Trek and Soudal Quickstep. Those teams are all over the front. Casper van Ouden's team, Picnic PostNL, just moving up on the left-hand side as the road widens right out again. XDS Astana and NSN riding for Ethan Vernon pick the right-hand side as you look at it, and still it's Soudal Quickstep, the 2 big teams, if you like, Lidl Trek and Soudal Quickstep, marking each other on the other side of the road. Javier Romo puts in an appearance for Movistar. They haven't really got an out-and-out sprinter to look after the interests of, but Uno X Mobility have, and that rider is Erlend Blikra, who of course crashed. He was the first rider to go down hard on in that big crash that marred the final sprint on stage 1. But hopefully he's recovered and can play his part in the bunch sprinters. Yesterday's Maglia Rosa, Giulio Ciccone, towards the back, as you can see, in the company of the Visma Lisa bike team, who are just looking after Jonas Vingegaard towards the back of the bunch. Looks pretty relaxed, Ciccone, and he's not part of the lead-out today for Jonathan Milan.
Yeah, he's going to be saving energy ahead of tomorrow. So the very far back end of the peloton, I think he decided that if Vingegaard stays in the back, I might as well stay with him. It's definitely a much safer position to be in, rather than in the middle of the peloton. It's either you're at the front or at the far back, as Visma Lisa bike decided. They almost detached at this point from the peloton.
You can see those big cranes in the distance in the big port, the busy port of Naples. That's where we're heading towards eventually, as they make their way through the city, cutting a line through the city down to the waterfront, and then turning right along the waterfront, sweeping towards the final kilometre where they hit these cobblestones through a hairpin bend with around about 400 metres to go, sweeping round on these very shiny volcanic cobblestones, and then uphill towards the finish here in the middle of Napoli.
Yeah, the finish line itself is not going to be super fast, as you pointed out, after the left corner at 600 meters. The cobble start is going to be going slightly uphill, roughly 2-3% before this large hairpin. It's almost like a corner, 2 corners joined together, and in there the roads we will be at 400 meters, going to pick up a little bit more, and then for 200 meters they're going to be climbing, I think, at around 5-6% before the 150-meter marks, where it gets much more easier, roughly at 1% till the finish line, where at 50 meters to go is going to be also the pavement is going to change, and it's a very demanding sprint. It's not the most straightforward, and you need to calculate exactly the momentum you want to go, because it's going to be very hard, very fast indeed, but the approach, but the sprint itself, it won't be the fastest, so you need to calculate exactly when you want to launch your sprint.
Soudal Quickstep and Lidl Trek have not moved from that position that they've taken up on the right-hand side of the road. Tudor Pro Cycling all lined up with Luca Mozzato on the wheel of Robin Froidevaux, the possibly their preferred sprinter for the day. He's very fast. Polti Visit Malta riding for Lonardi today. Erlen Blikra has got his team down the middle, the Uno X Mobility riders. NSN have got Ethan Vernon with a big lead-out train in front of him. Jake Stewart will be his last lead-out man. XDS Astana have got 4 riders towards the front, one of whom is Matteo Malicelli, their dedicated sprinter. And it is, at the moment, status quo. Nothing much is changing on this big wide road. The teams are just holding their position until one of them, as we hit 10 kilometres to go, decides to really take things up. But maybe not this far out. It's a long, long way to go. 10 kilometres to go if you start to commit one entire team to the front. So for the time being, this relatively neutral status of the race suits just about every team because they don't want to commit at the moment.
No, but it will dramatically change in around 6 kilometers to go because they're going to exit this very moment of this very road, sorry, and they're going to hit first a couple of roundabouts before 4-kilometer marks when there is a chicane that will bring them even closer to the coastline, and then it's going to be a gentle sweep left and right before heading the finale. So in there we can expect a fairly strong acceleration by the peloton once they're going to be closer to the point. Still Pinarello leading the way for NSN.
Some massive ocean cruise liners in the docks as the Giro d'Italia comes thundering towards them out of the hills and down through the city. There is Lonardi being pointed out from Polti Visit Malta. There would be some surprise if Lonardi was able to pull off a victory here, but Polti Visit Malta giving him a proper lead-out train here. Real support then from the team from Italy. Erlen Blikra recovered from his crash on stage 1. Wasn't the only sprinter, of course, to go down. Caden Groves went down in that crash and had to abandon the race. Dylan Groenewegen dislocated his shoulder, but he has battled through and he's in great form. Bottom left-hand side of your screen, that's where Dylan Groenewegen finds himself now. We've got 3.8 kilometers to go until we enter the sprint zone at 5 kilometers. Then we could see Bahrain victorious just dropping back a little bit. They don't have an out-and-out sprinter to work for today. They've got the pink jersey to protect. That might be the end of their job, and they might just drop back.
Ethan Vernon, the English sprinter, well escorted by Ryan Mullen, the Irish, on his right, and Jake Stewart on his back at this point, this moment, 106. Tall figure of the Englishman. The right of the screen, Decathlon as well, Pinarello Q36, they're all part of the mix because the road is super wide.
Ethan Vernon, who has committed his future and signed a contract for next year. It's just that he hasn't told anybody where he's going. So he's one of the riders, one of the sprinters who's on the move as Decathlon pick it up down the middle. That's the team of Tobias Lund Andersen, don't forget. As well as Felix Gall in the general classification. He's playing his part in the lead-out now for Tobias Lund Andersen, the Danish rider, formerly of Picnic Postanel, who has made a real impact on the sprinters scene in 2026. Can he ride to victory today? An uphill finish on cobblestones for a lighter sprinter could suit him down to the ground, or will the real power of Jonathan Milan finally prevail? Milan alongside Manier, they are locked together side by side with Madis Mikkels and Pascal Ackermann on the wheels there. 4 sprinters all in a little formation there. That's where some real power lies on the right-hand side of the road.
And the choice of Mikkels and Ackermann is just to find themselves in behind the right train, as what we expected in the first stage was the Suda Quick Step, the train who emerged as the best, and that was not the case of the third stage when the Unibet Rose Rockets emerged as a better lead out. It is, I think, Dion Smith speeding things up for Team NSN.
NSN have really started to lift it now as Smith gets onto the front. They look round to see they're a little bit disjointed, and their sprinters and the final lead-up men, Ethan Vernon and Jake Stewart, lie a little bit further back with Ryan Mullen. Gets a bit scrappy now, the pace going up. They go up and over a little motorway rise, and it's very fast. Warp speed engaged now with 7 kilometers remaining. Unibet Rose Rockets pick it up. Bahrain victorious, still looking after that pink jersey as they come off the big wide road and down to a much narrower slip road off this motorway then. A real pinch point in the race there as the peloton squeezes onto a single track road.
So they're going to be out of this road as they're going to turn left in this roundabout-like curve.
Widens out a little bit as they continue to drop down at very high speed now, 1.5 kilometers to go until the sprint zone. And that was the battle just to get into that slip road in first place and keep their sprinters up towards the front. Lose position here, and already it might be quite difficult to get back towards the front without expending too much energy. Ex-DS Astana have played that perfectly down the middle. Davide Ballerini, etc. Christian Scaroni, they've still got their man, Matteo Malicelli, really handily placed towards the front. The pick jersey's dropped a little bit further back. He's got a couple of teammates up towards the front, though. Picnic Postanel working their way closer to the front. NSN dispersed all over the place. Tobias Lund Andersen just picking the wheels and staying calm down the middle. And on the right-hand side of the road, Soudal Quickstep and Lidl Trek still have numbers there, but it's getting a bit scrappy now with 5.9 to go.
Yeah, it seems like the best team, like was Soudal Quickstep. They were all together. As they still controlling the situation. A little roundabouts, both sides are good for the riders.
So it's predominantly flat now and wide roads as they approach the port, and then they'll turn right-handed, and then it's flat all the way to within the last kilometre where there's a couple of sweeping bends, and then it picks up on the cobblestones with that sharp rise to the finish line and the hairpin, sweeping hairpin bend with about 400 metres to go. But these are good, straight, flat, wide roads, and Lidl Trek getting themselves back into working order on the left-hand side. Soudal Quickstep just switching a little bit inside. Erlen Blikras, Uno X Mobility have lost their shape a little bit, but Unibet Rose Rockets have got Dylan Groenewegen just slipping into the wheels of Decathlon AG2R a little bit further back.
Another roundabout here, approaching one line because they're heading right as Unibet Rose Rockets, well organized, well gathered at the front.
Yeah, Dylan Groenewegen isn't on the wheels of those three riders from Unibet Rose Rockets right at the front, but they are. He's opted instead just to drop a little bit further back, but it is Unibet Rose Rockets who really pick it up and dictate the pace at the front. But Groenewegen detached at the moment from his lead-out train. Simone Consoni has got Max Walscheid and Jonathan Milan on the wheels there. Lidl Trek still with a decent representation of numbers. Soudal Quickstep as well with Jasper Stuyven, who'll be the last lead-out man for Paul Magnier in all likelihood. Max Walscheid starting to motor. Jonathan Milan trying to pick the wheel. Groupama FDJ on the right-hand side of the road getting themselves organised. Tobias Lund Andersen freestyling a little bit in the mix there as Unibet Rose Rockets get themselves sorted. A little switch in direction now. And Jonathan Narvaez, as you pointed out to me, Jacopo, is, well, he's a little bit further back, but he is involved.
It's not far. If he's there, that means he's going to try something. Groupama FDJ United gathered themselves at the front. There's going to be a moment here to look where your teammates are, look where the sprinter, if he's behind you or not, and then it's a moment to decide if you want to give it a go or not. This is the type of road they're going to endure.
Yep, they've hit the docks now, and it's straight roads and pretty wide roads as well. And teams now with a lot of representation, with big numbers, have a real advantage. And Unibet Rose Rockets, at this point, if the race were to stop now, they'd be very happy. But you can see Dylan Groenewegen now already starting to sprint up down the middle of the road. He's already put his nose slightly in the wind there, following the move of the decathlon rider as he tries to find his team. And now he slots in on the big lead-out train of Unibet Rose Rockets. They've got Groenewegen where they want him now. They've got 4 riders in front of the Dutch sprinting superstar.
They're still far from the finish, but it's nonetheless a good position. I think their job today is going to be mainly maneuvering and placing Groenewegen at the bottom of the climb. Then it's going to be up to the strong Dutch rider to find his way through the peloton.
Diego Xavier in the blue jersey trying to lead out Giovanni Lonardi, and Soudal Quickstep trying to gain a little bit of position. Paul Magnier is sitting there down. They come down the middle of the road on the white lines, but he's handily placed. Magnier looks super relaxed, very calm. Pascal Ackermann still fighting for his wheel along with Jensen Plowright. They're both trying to pick the wheel of the same rider, and it's Damalia Ciclamino as they pass within 3 kilometers to go. Really powerful showing on the right-hand side of the road from the Unibet Rose Rockets. They look at this point of the race super well organised. But Dylan Groenewegen just gets bumped off the wheel by Lidl Trek now, and he is in the mix there with Jonathan Milan a little bit further back down.
Yeah, Jonathan Milan was a little bit detached from his team. He was not right on the wheel of either Max Walscheid or Simone Consoni. As you can see, he's there on the left behind Paul Magnier.
Yep. Yeah, that's where all the sprinting power is at the moment. Milan's picked the wheel of Manier, Valscheit alongside him. Simone Consoni a bit detached. Jensen Plowright trying to get involved. He's got one. He's got Edward Plankat still leading him out as Soudal Quickstep starts to work through their numbers a little bit. Plowright's all on his own at the moment alongside the Unibet Rose Rockets team. Paul Manier then still very relaxed, still with 2 or 3 riders. Jasper Steven included, the former winner of Milan-San Remo. As Lidl Trek pick it up now. Max Valscheit looking around, checking to see where Jonathan Milan is. 2 kilometers to go.
It's Teutenberg, and on his side is Lukas Kubic, the Slovakian national champion, leading another trio for Unibet Rose Rockets. As Decathlon CMS EGM appears on the left of the screen, they're still short in number.
Yeah, it's Lukas Kubic who's hit the front though, but he has been supplanted by Decathlon AG2R, and they are they're working for Tobias Lund Andersen. They take it up now with 1.5 kilometers to go. NSN a little bit all over the place at 6s and 7s. Ethan Vernon trying to pick the wheel of Froidevaux of the Tudor Pro Cycling team, still with strength in depth though. Unibet Rose Rockets have done a really good lead out here. The Kopeckis have got Groenewegen on the wheel, so a brilliant lead out. 1.2 kilometers to go. Unibet Rose Rockets are going to take the race into the final kilometre. Decathlon still fighting for position. A little bit further back then you can catch a little flash of the Lidl Trek multicoloured kit of Jonathan Milan, but he's a bit exposed. Matteo Malacelli then has got himself into the wheel of Jasper Steven as Paul Manier drops to around about 7th place. Inside the last kilometre then, a couple of sweeping turns before they eventually turn left-handed and onto the cobbles. Here we go then, the cobblestones are coming in Naples. Groenewegen with his team on the front, still 2 riders to work with. Milan as Manier on his wheel. Malacelli right in the mix. Ben Turner getting involved as well from the Net Company team. Onto these rough cobbles then, and they head towards this sweeping hairpin bend. Groenewegen with 1 lead out, and he's going to have to do a big job here as this difficult turn now. Can they all negotiate it safely? Manier cruising around. Malacelli goes big crash. Lots of riders down. Manier trying to pick his way through. 2 riders go clear. Ben Turner, but a couple of riders have survived the carnage. Dylan Groenewegen is down. He's not the only one. I think that's Jonathan Milan out of the equation. Malacelli hits the front, and it's Jasper Steven on his wheel. Can Malacelli hold them all off?
It's Ballerini here.
It's Davide Ballerini. Jasper Steven on his wheel. Steven trying to get across. Manier still battling for the minor placings, but XDS Astana have it. It's the Italian Davide Ballerini. Steven coming with a charge. Ballerini takes the win. He survived the carnage. XDS Astana have a victory. Again, a 2nd win at the Giro d'Italia, but those cobblestones destroyed the sprinters' field there.
Disaster happened as Elmar Render was the first rider hitting the road. Dylan Groenewegen, I think it was raining because we were so focused watching the race, but actually started raining outside as Elmar Renders, he started pedal and he hit the road very hard. But this man, he survived. He was in very well positioned because he was right behind Dylan Groenewegen before the crash happened. He had Steven behind him. Manier, he crashed, he managed his way to be back on the bike and nonetheless got the 3rd place.
Well, once again, right at the end, we've had all sorts of drama there.
Tobias Lund
Andersen
was caught up in the crash. I think Jonathan Milan as well was involved in the crash. And Ballerini, not the name you were expecting, but no, he found himself to, you know...
He was the lead out for Malacelli, and he did a really good job, wasn't he? And Malacelli must have gone down.
I don't know, because I thought like Ballerini was quite alone. I don't know if he was meant to be the lead out, but he was there all alone. And he managed to survive the corner, he managed to survive, and he launched a very long charge sprint. As we're going to see, no, I think Malacelli's
a bit further back, isn't he? Yeah, Malacelli's already in about 12th place, so Ballerini, just through positioning, finds himself in this position. But here's where they start to go down. It's the Unibet Rose Rockets, just wipe out there. And Steven and Ballerini just surf through.
How Manier managed to be 3rd at the end, the Egos. The one side of the road was very slippery.
That's Malacelli going down there.
Look at Manier.
Jonathan Milan picking himself up off the ground. Here's Davide Ballerini. What a moment for Davide Ballerini. A first ever win of a stage at the Giro d'Italia for this very experienced, very strong rider, Davide Ballerini. And that was all about positioning there. What a performance.
Nonetheless, it's nothing to take away from the victory of Ballerini, because he was in a perfect position to launch the sprint. He
might have won it anyway.
Yeah. He was just unfortunate for Groenewegen and as well for Magnier. I think he was possibly is the only one who's going to have a lot of regret, because seeing what he did, he was on the ground at 300 meters, he managed to be third.
Look at the effort Jasper Stuyven is making to try and get round and off the wheel of Ballerini, who holds off the Belgian. And
heavy
now
rain.
It is pouring with rain. The crowd are rushing for cover. The rain might have already started falling, as you said, and that might have just affected the... it's so unfortunate, but the rain clouds have just thundered in over Napoli now, and it's absolutely teeming with rain. Paul Magnier picked up a significant third place. Jensen Plowright with fourth. Ben Turner with fifth place. Jonathan Milan not even in the top 10. So disaster for Jonathan Milan in terms of his prospects of winning the Maglia Ciclamino. But again, just like on stage one, a big crash affecting the outcome as Aular is shepherded by Ivan Garcia Cortina to the finish line of this extraordinary finale to the Napoli stage.
What a disappointment for the Unibet Rose Rockets. They were once again the best team in leading out the sprinter. Dylan Groenewegen was still with Elmar Reinders to starting the job and to lead him out at the end, and they went both on the ground. What a pity. Breaks your heart seeing such a commitment from the team, such a successful lead out as well, and ending up with just a crash, taking away the chance for the team to win an historical stage. But Ballerini did everything right. Again, he was in the best position to launch his sprint.
I mean, a dream has gone into fulfillment there for Davide Ballerini, hasn't it? He's such a strong rider. It's been a long time since he's won a race at World Tour level. Davide Ballerini, you kind of, when you look at him and see what he's achieved throughout his career, how strong he is, you do wonder how he's not managed to win a Grand Tour stage before, but he's done it now.
Yeah, and in a good fashion. That was very unfortunate for the rain. Again, we were so focused watching our television, we were not looking at the glasses, the windows. And
I mean, if it did start to rain, it only just started, didn't it? As the riders hit the last kilometre. That awful timing for the rain to fall.
We got another replay.
They go down, these two riders, almost the same point, doesn't it? It's the first rider who just loses, and then just a domino effect behind. Lund Andersen going down hard.
How Magnier survived that, I really don't know. Look at this. It's overtaking Elmar Reinder. Oh no, the legs of Groenewegen, I'm sorry. Here, even the chain fell off. It was already raining, as we see now from the camera. It started raining, but from our view, it was not
the cobbles were already wet.
Yeah. Disaster. Look at Magnier, where is he now? At this point,
dropped his chain. Has to get the chain back
10 riders in front of him, and nonetheless he managed from a standing still position to got the third place.
Well, this is the image that Davide Ballerini will be etched onto his memory forever and a day. The winner of the Napoli stage with the Bay of Naples behind him, holding off a rider of the calibre of Jasper Stuyven as well, with Magnier, you're right, charging towards the finish.
He must be raging, Paul Magnier, after losing the chance of winning this stage. But Ballerini got everything right. You need to stay upright if you want to contest a sprint, and he did so. Even Jasper Stuyven had to unclip the right pedal in order to stay on his bike.
Total disbelief from Davide Ballerini. There in the final, as a lead-out for Matteo Malicelli, he wasn't too far behind, but he clearly lost the wheel of Davide Ballerini, and Ballerini at that point did exactly the right thing, started to ride for his own position, and it was his positioning into that final corner and his strength to hold off Stuyven that won him the race. But you do have to question whether or not that finish was fair. in terms of the course design. The risk of there being rain, which did actually happen in the end, was always present in Napoli. And was that a reasonable finish with that particular type of stones that they had to ride on? Because disasters did strike at the end.
And it's another blow for all the other opponents. Despite not winning the stage, Paul Magnier has slotted again a lot of points, because the immediate riders behind him was Jonathan Milan and Tobias Lund Andersen. They are not featuring in the top 10, so it's another big blow in the Ciclamino pursuit for those two riders.
Well, he's done it. Davide Ballerini is finally a winner of his home Grand Tour.
Davide, you won in Turkey just before the Giro. You had the confidence. You wanted to win a stage, but did you want to win this one and this way?
No, actually, I was thinking to win one stage in the Giro, but like all the other years that I was participating on this race. But yes, today was not on the plan. Today, the sprinter was Malucelli. I was trying to do the maximum for him. But when we arrived in the last corner, I saw that the first two guys. Thank you, Malu. I saw that the first two guys they had a crash. I just exit from the corner and I hear in the radio, go, 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 till the finish, there is a gap. I just start and I was hoping the line was coming really fast. But then, yeah, I made it. I mean, I'm really happy.
Your first win at the Giro d'Italia after so many years. How does it feel? What does it mean for you?
Yeah, finally. I mean, it's really important because we work too much. I mean, we work too much. We work a lot for this, and there is always, in cycling, there is always some problems. I mean, and then especially when you don't expect the result, the win is coming.
Grazie mille.
And here's how he did it. Try as he might, Stuyven just couldn't come off his wheel and round him. That takes some strength to hold off Jasper Stuyven all the way to that line. And Magnier finishing like an absolute freight train, clear in third place.
This replay, amazing view with the sea at the background. And it's the first victory for an Italian as well in this Giro d'Italia.
Yeah. Second victory for XDS Astana, of course, after the win with Thomas Silva on stage 2. What a race they're having. Davide Ballerini first went to the Giro d'Italia in 2018. Came back in 2020. Raced it again in 2022, and he's been ever present since. 23, 24, 20. Didn't actually missed it last year, and he comes back in 2026. So multiple attempts to get a stage win at the Giro, and he's finally done it. Davide Ballerini.
Yes, pointed out by Jeff at the interviews, he just won. He was just back on victory at the Tour of Turkey in a massive, in a bunch sprint. And I think he came in here at the Giro this year with a lot of confidence, because he knew he could have do something very good in the coming days, possibly, because as he pointed out, he was here today just to help Malucelli getting and scoring his victory. But it was a messy finale, and the only team who got it right was yet again the Unibet Rose Rockets.
Stuyven, second place at a Grand Tour stage for his new team, newly signed from Lidl Trek, of course, to Soudal Quickstep, but he'll be frustrated that he couldn't get round Ballerini to take the win there.
All smile for Davide Ballerini. More than happy to see him winning.
It's a team who've already done enough at this Giro d'Italia. Let's have a look at the general classification. Top 10, no change. Everybody through to the final 5 kilometers in one piece, so nobody, there were splits obviously at the finish line because of that crash, but nobody loses any time there. Oilalio continues to lead. provisional general classification, 2 minutes and 51 seconds to yesterday's winner, Igor Arrieta. And the rain has stopped now, so it just turned up for the finish, didn't it? And
yeah, it was
again. So unlucky. Well, while Davide Ballerini is toweling himself down and getting ready to step onto the top step of the podium for the first time in his career as a stage winner, it's time to hear once again from our new Maglia Rosa, Afonso Eulalia.
Afonso, how has this first day in the Maglia Rosa been? Have you looked at yourself many times?
No, I cannot look, but yeah, I think I'm look good, no? And I look the feeling the rest this pink jersey, and I want to continue with this jersey, no?
How did the race go for you today? It was obvious it would be a bunch sprint finish.
Yeah, in the final is a perfect day. Is not easy, but full stress for the condition, also because these roads is quite slippery. But yeah, in the final is the team did a perfect job. I ride in the front. I can survive one more day with this jersey, and I also arrive safe in the final.
One more day, and there's one more day to come, and it's a mountain day, and you're a climber. Are you confident to retain the jersey?
Yeah, I'm confident, but we will see. No, I have a lot of up and downs. We will see if tomorrow is up and not down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Big fan of Eulalio's interviews. I think he speaks honestly, and he speaks like he's enjoying, well, he's obviously enjoying this race. It's a tremendous honour to be leading the race, but he has a tremendous positive attitude. It's good to see.
Castel del Lobo on your images, one of the most famous city, trademark of Naples.
City's oldest castle, and they've got plenty of castles in Naples as well. Once again, the Napoli stage has delivered some beautiful images. We'll continue to do as we wait for the podium, but it's worth just looking back at how today's intriguing stage unfolded with its chaotic finale once again. What a moment for Davide Ballerini. Eye-catching third place, though, from Paul Magnier. We saw on stage one how Simone Consoni somehow avoided crashing and somehow picked his way through all the bodies that were falling around him. as we look at the Castelnuovo, which is served, by the way, as the race headquarters for the day. Some setting for all the staff from RCS. They've been locked up in that castle, in that dungeon, going about their business. But, we'll have another look at the top 10 after we've seen the rider who finished in first place, the 31-year-old Davide Ballerini.
Cordiano Daioni, presidente della Federazione Ciclistica Italiana, e Marco Brachini, direttore Marketing, Brand and Customer Experience di Sala Assicurazione.
It's been part of the World Tour for the best part of a decade, having initially made his mark in the multicoloured red kit of Androni Giocattoli back in the day. Davide Ballerini, signed then by Patrick Lefebvre for many years to the colours of Quick Step, where of course he rode to victory in the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, his biggest win to date. But I think this, because it's the Giro d'Italia, this stage win probably is as big as the Omloop results, if not bigger, because it'll just mean that much more to the 31-year-old Davide Ballerini. It's not only is it the Giro d'Italia, it's one of the landmark stages as well, the Napoli stage. And a big crowd there celebrating, as Jacopo was saying, the first Italian stage win of the Giro d'Italia. It's always a relief when the home nation finally gets its first victory.
I colori di X Sara Team, complimenti del presidente della Federazione Ciclistica Italiana, Cordiano Daioni, del capitano del Napoli, dal braccio di Napoli per questa bellissima vittoria. Complimenti a Davide Ballerini.
As the raw statistics from his sprint, a maximum 1200 watts.
Sindaco di Napoli, a Cordiano Daioni, presidente della Federazione Ciclistica Italiana, a Marco Brachini, direttore marketing, brand and customer experience di Sala Assicurazioni, e a Giovanni Di Lorenzo, capitano del Napoli.
Those last 300 metres must have felt like an eternity for Davide Ballerini, in the knowledge that Stovin was on his wheel, and I doubt he was aware of quite how quickly Paul Magnier was closing as well, but he held them all off to take the win.
Yeah, because also Steven was already been hit in the front quite often to lead out Paul Magnier. So both of them, they started on the same ground, you know, both as a dedicated lead out for the sprint leader. But Ballerini got the best of Jasper Stuyven as we're looking again at the top 10.
Yep. Soudal Quickstep in second and third, lead-out man for Paul Magnier. Jasper Stuyven. Jensen Plowright probably be a bit frustrated, but also should be very satisfied with that performance as well. Up to fourth place, just outside the podium places. In the absence of Caden Grove, he is the fastest rider for Alpecin Premier Tech. Good performance from the Aussie.
Classifica generale, arriva dal Portogallo, difende I colori della barra Victorious, Afonso Eulalio.
And the Maglia Rosa safely negotiated the first of his days in pink, with a big task to do to defend the jersey tomorrow. As he says, he's a rider who doesn't quite know where his consistency might lie, whether or not he's going to have a good day or a bad day tomorrow. The legs will tell when we get to the Blockhouse climb, if not before. The longest stage of the entire Giro d'Italia, 244 kilometers, awaits us tomorrow, and the first big uphill finish. But he's got a big margin to defend over most of the GC favourites of over 6 minutes.
Yeah, tomorrow it's not going to be an easy day for him, but I think he's going to be poised, and you know, they often say like a Maglia Rosa, you know, a leather jersey might give you, extra energy, and I hope for him it's going to be the case, because I agree with you, that was a fun interview. And
he's a character, isn't he?
Yeah.
Igor Arieta will be quietly confident as well going into tomorrow's stage, potentially. If Eulalio cracks, then he might have an opportunity of taking the jersey. He's a good climber, and don't rule out Christian Scaroni either. a lot could change in the general class. Well, a lot will change in the general classification tomorrow, one way or another. But here's a rider who is looking increasingly confident, and I don't think, realistically, it's going to be possible unless Jonathan Milan wins both the last two nailed-on sprints in Milan and Rome, and Paul Magnier doesn't pick up any points. Even then, I think Paul Magnier's advantage is already building up to something that is going to be very, very difficult for Jonathan Milan or indeed anyone else to catch. We'll have a look at the standings after we've seen him step onto the podium once again. He'll be annoyed that he hasn't made it 3 wins out of 3 bunch sprints, but what could he do? He survived, he didn't crash when so many sprinters around him did go down. Malacelli went down, Milan went down, Groenewegen went down. Magnier stayed up, but he got hampered by the riders who fell in front of him, almost bunny hopping over a prone Dylan Groenewegen, and then going off once he'd bounced his chain back on and got going again, going off in pursuit of the front of the race from around about 7th or 8th place. He finished 3rd. He's in unbelievably good form, Paul Magnier.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's a big disappointment from him today's stage, but I guess that something might happen. Is the overall now a big blow and for Milan, as he now sits almost 70 points down, 66 points down of Paul Magnier.
66 points down. Davide Ballerini had 8 points before today, and now he's got 58. That's how quickly it can change, mind you. But Paul Magnier, with 130 points, has a commanding lead in the Maglia Ciclamino.
David Sevilla, again, uncontested today, his jersey. Seated quite comfortably in the lead of the Maglia Blue, but tomorrow everything might change, because we have a second category and a first category and the blockhouse.
Yeah,
it's a lot of points up for grab.
Still has a decent lead in this competition. Not much would have changed today, but there's 18 points available on the road, and that's before they get to the blockhouse climb, which he's unlikely to score any points at unless he's in a breakaway that goes all the way to the line. But the expectation is there'll be a GC race for the stage win at Blockhouse, so his opportunity might be to get himself in the move that goes to the Category 2 climb of Roccaraso. The points that he built up back in Bulgaria still holding firm, and the top 3 places haven't changed. Tarozzi moves up just 1 place ahead of Aina Rubio, who drops down. Other than that, no change in the top 10 of the King of the Mountains competition. 22 points his lead. 18 points available at the top of the Cat 2 climb of the day tomorrow in the middle of the races. Eulalio also continues to lead the white jersey standings as well. Pink and white, 24 years of age, the Portuguese rider from Figueira. As the crowd begin to file away from the finish line here in Napoli. But those who've gathered outside the podium cheering this young man to the rafters. As we get to know a little bit more about Eulalio, and he gets to know a little bit more about himself in this voyage of discovery after his second place finish yesterday in those dramatic circumstances. Igor Arieta will be wearing that white jersey on his behalf tomorrow, because he still sits in second place in the white jersey standings, and this man will be in pink tomorrow for Bahrain Victorious. No change in the top 8 places, but Davide Picanzoli moves up 1 place ahead of Mathis Rondel, and solely courtesy of their positioning, their finishing position at the line, because they are level on time at 6:22. Paul Magnier then, with his commanding lead in the Maglia Ciclamino and a third place to add to his 2 victories. Let's hear from him.
Not again in Napoli, like last year, but the circumstances are completely different. Tell us how you saw it.
Yeah, I'm for sure really disappointed. Yeah, the team did an amazing job again today, and I was in perfect position till this U-turn, 300 meters to go, but then unfortunately riders crashed in front of me, so I lost a lot of time, and yeah, I think I was really strong, but the result is not there, but I can already really thank my team, and I hope everybody's okay from the crash.
You didn't give up after the crash or the semi-crash. What were you hoping when you're back on your bike?
Yeah, I still have the Ciclamino jersey, and yeah, I knew I had really strong legs, so I was maybe hoping that the guys in the front yeah, cracked, or I don't know, so I still give my best, and yeah, in the end it's 3rd place, still some points for the Ciclamino jersey, but I was for sure expecting for better.
Merci.
Well, I've just learned a new cycling word, a semi-crash from Jeff there. He didn't crash, actually. He somehow managed to stay upright. But big disappointment. Let's have a look at tomorrow's stage then. All 244 kilometres of it. It's a 4-star stage, the first 4-star stage we've had in this Giro d'Italia, and the first really big GC test, surely. Leaving Formia in Campania and then going off onto a little circuit before the race gets underway, just to add a few kilometres to what is already a very long stage. And then inland, getting ever higher in altitude. Intermediate sprint comes halfway through the stage, and then the climbing starts. Uncategorized climb, and then the Category 2 climb of Roccaraso. Famous climb in the Giro d'Italia, dropping down as they head into Abruzzo, and then for the appointment at Blockhouse. And before the climb starts, or just after the climb starts actually, all 13.5 kilometres of it, it's the Red Bull kilometre, and then the long ascent, steep ascent of Blockhouse. Deep into Abruzzo we go, a long and arduous stage, which is surely going to have a big effect in the general classification. Are we going to see Jonas Vingegaard make his first big move of this Giro? That's the question, which we can only answer tomorrow. So we'll see you again for live coverage as we bid farewell for the 6th successive year from Napoli and another dramatic finale. But from me, it's ciao.
For
and
now.
from Jacopo,
Ciao for now.
ciao.